Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Uzumaki clan lied to about Naruto Naruhina. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Wacko12 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. It rained heavily at the place known as the Valley of the End. It was as if the heavens themselves were crying out what had transpired there, an epic duel between friends. Lying on the ground near the water were two people, Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki. Both were out cold, and were motionless. However, unknown to them, several hooded people watched the whole battle from afar. Only when neither of the fighters was moving did the four figures come out of the forest. Slowly they walked up to the two genin, and one of them, a woman judging by her figure, bent down and checked their pulses. "Well?" one of the others asked, a male by his voice. The woman looked up, revealing her blue eyes. "They're alive, and have minimal wounds. It should be easy to move Naruto-kun." "What about the Uchiha?" she asked. "Leave him," the man said. "It doesn't matter if Konoha gets him or Orochimaru, we will have our revenge against Konoha and the rest of the 5 great countries." And with that he picked up Naruto, making sure not to harm him any more than he already is, and all 4 of them headed off. An hour or so later Kakashi along with Pakken arrived to the valley. When they got there all they found was an unconscious Sasuke but no Naruto. Kakashi began to worry. What happened to him? He couldn't have fled, could he? No, that wasn't like Naruto. "Pakken, can you get his scent?" Kakashi asked the Nin dog. Pakken took a couple of sniffs and shook his head sadly. "No, the rain is washing away any scent. I do however smell a lot of chakra having been released, so I have to say that the Kyuubi must have come out." Kakashi nodded, a sad look in his eye as he picked up Sasuke and hefted him onto his back. With one last look at the statue of the first Hokage, the two headed off. The news of Naruto's disappearance became top priority amongst the council of Konoha. Those who despised the Kyuubi container merely put in that he was dead, which earned them a cold look from Tsunade. The idea that the boy might have fled was out of the question. Naruto was too damn loyal to the village to turn traitor. Tsunade wanted to send out a search party to find him, but the elders rebuffed her plans. If the other villages knew that they were missing their Jinchuriki, then they would waste no time in taking it to their advantage. Also they had the Uchiha boy back, and that was all that mattered. So, against Tsunade's wishes and a few others, Naruto was declared Kia/missing nin. To say the people of Konoha were upset would be an understatement. On that night there wasn't a single bar or restaurant that wasn't celebrating the death of the demon boy and the return of the Uchiha prodigy. A few had even tried to ransack his home, only to be brutally beaten down personally by Tsunade and the remains of the rookie 12. The Hokage decided that the apartment would be banned to the public, as a way of honoring Naruto. There were some people who mourned over the loss of the Uzumaki boy. Old man Tuchi and his daughter Ayam were very upset of the loss of their favorite customer, so upset that they even closed their restaurant for about a week. Iruka would be at his apartment, staring at a photo of himself and Naruto on the day after the boy became a genin. "You would have been a great Hokage," Iruka would think to himself every now and then. Kakashi stood at the memorial stone of the fallen for hours, reading the names of his teammates and sensei. "Forgive me, Rin, Obito, sensei, Kushina-san. I couldn't keep my promise," he thought. Kankuro and Temari would sit on a bench, watching their little brother stare up at the sky. Those two had much to thank Naruto for saving their little brother from himself, and now they could never repay him. Gaara thought about the words Naruto said to him in the aftermath of their battle. "Naruto, thank you," he thought to himself. "To honor you, I shall become Kazekage and prove to the village I am not a monster, just like you said." The rookie 12 took Naruto's apparent demise very hard, especially the rescue squad. Shikamaru would pace around in his family's backyard, trying to constantly go over his strategy, trying to figure out where he went wrong. This earned the concern of his mother Yoshino. Choji barely ate anything for a week, even after being released from the hospital. Niji didn't say a word after he got back to the compound, too upset about what happened, even if the mission was a success. Kiba just stayed home during his healing, silently looking out the window. Rock Lee didn't even do any training for a day, the grief too much for him to bear. Though they didn't know Naruto very well, Ino, Tenten and Shino also mourned for the loss of the blonde-haired boy. Ino even bought a large assortment of flowers for the tombstone that was made for him. Sakura remained by Sasuke's side in the hospital, both grateful and angry of the situation. "I got one person who I cared about back. But I lost another one," Sakura thought sadly. "Why does Kami have to be so cruel?" But the one who took the loss hard out of all of them was none other than Hinata Hyuga. For the rest of the month she either was in her room, at the training grounds or at Naruto's grave, cleaning it or placing flowers on it. She barely ate anything and servants would have to bring her food to her room. Her only regret was that she never told Naruto her feelings for him. She wondered what would have happened if she told him sooner, instead of keeping her feelings to herself. Not being so shy around him either. Even if he rejected her, at least she wouldn't feel such pain. Sooner or later she snapped out of her depression. The only reason was because Naruto wouldn't want her to feel down. "I'll become stronger," she thought to herself with newfound confidence. For Naruto-kun. Elsewhere on a boat heading towards a large land area to the west, the hooded figures could be seen on it again. The leader, the man who carried Naruto away from the valley, was staring at the land that was his home. "We're finally home, nephew," he said to the resting form of Naruto. Back to the whirlpool country. 3 years later, much had changed since Naruto's disappearance. Miji, now a Jonin, was currently dating Tenten. Shikamaru was dating Temari. Apparently acting as a liaison for the Suna ambassador had its advantages. Ino had begun to form a romantic relationship with the new member of Team Kakashi, Sai. Gaara had become the new Kazekage of Suna, while dating his former student Matsuri. Sasuke had been kept under house arrest with a curfew as well. Sakura would usually be escorting him around the village, while ignoring the looks of awe from the citizens and how they constantly thanked him for ridding them of the demon brat. Of course that earned them a good punch from Sakura, leaving the poor fool out cold for hours. The biggest change was in Hinata. She had developed both physically and mentally. She decided that she would grow her hair out and showed a little bit of her figure, though only a little. Hinata was still shy sometimes, but any signs of stuttering were long gone. She had also become one of the strongest kunoichis in the village, perhaps even rivaling Tsunade. Despite her shyness, her confidence soared up high to the point where not even the simple insult from her father would bring her down. Hinata had developed much over the years and she owed everything to Naruto. That also caused a bit of problems for her clan. Talk of Naruto's death was still running rampant now and then around the village. And unfortunately, despite Tsunade's warnings, people would now and then spit on Naruto's name. This was a problem because if people were ever to say bad about him in front of one of Naruto's friends, they would get a scolding or a beating, and in Hinata's case, put into a near-death state. The worst time was when Hinata was making her daily trip to Naruto's tombstone. She caught several men, drunk, defying the stone, writing words such as demon and hell spawn. All of those men were literally crippled in several areas of the body. This did not go well with the Hyuga clan. They were a well-respected clan, living among the village since its founding. With reports of a clan member, let alone the heiress of the clan, doing such things was unacceptable. Hayashi had tried to discipline his daughter, but it appeared he no longer had control over her, not entirely though. However, she began to earn the respect of not just the majority of the branch house, but some of the main house members as well. Even Hanabi began to look up to her a little. But let us come to the current events of right now. Team 8, or Team Kurenai as they were now called, had been summoned to the Hokage's office for a new assignment. Judging by Tsunade's expression, it was pretty serious. Once they were all standing to attention did Tsunade speak. "The mission I'm about to give you is of the utmost importance as it affects us both nationally and internally. I'm sure that most of you has heard the invasion of the land of Tea." Kiba and Hinata were in the dark, but Shino explained. "I heard it from my father. A large army consisting of samurais and ninjas from an unknown country invaded the land of Tea. Because they lacked the military force, the entire country was taken over in just a few weeks. The daimyo's family was completely wiped out." Hinata put a hand to her mouth, horrified of what she just heard. Kiba gulped. That was big, even for him. Tsunade nodded and continued, "Which brings us back to the current situation. Due to the conflicts between Takigakure and Konoha, the daimyos of our respected countries are meeting in a neutral area to create a more permanent alliance. I dispatched a squad to escort the fire daimyo to the rendezvous point, but we lost contact with them a day ago and have heard nothing from the waterfall village. I'm sending you along with Team Kakashi, Team Asuma and Team Gai to find out what the situation is." "Kurenai." The said woman looked up. "Because your team is more adept to tracking, I'm putting you in command of this mission." "Understood," Kurenai said. Tsunade nodded and dismissed them. Once they were gone, Tsunade said, "You can come out now." And with just those words the Sannin Jiraiya appeared out of nowhere. He looked the same after 3 years, yet he was not his usual happy self, though he hadn't been like that since Naruto's apparent demise. Still, that hadn't stopped him with his research, though she was pretty sure that was only to distract him from his guilt. "I'm guessing that you're not just here to say hello?" Tsunade asked. The Toad Sage smirked. "That and to say I may have gotten some clues on who our mysterious invaders might be." He paused as he waited for Tsunade to speak. When she didn't, he continued. "One of my sources managed to get a tip on that the invaders came from one of the countries from the far west, across the ocean. So far the only country there that I know about is the Whirlpool country, but they were destroyed years ago." "Still, you can never be too sure," Tsunade sighed as she leaned back in her chair. "I have to admit that we hadn't heard much from the west in a while since, I guess, when the Kyuubi attacked 16 years ago." She then got up and looked out the window facing the village. "Sometimes I wonder if this is some sort of cruel joke that Kami has set upon us." Back with Kurenai's team, they along with the others had already set off towards the last known destination of the daimyo's convoy. While Team Kurenai had Akamaru, Kakashi summoned his nin dogs and divided them up amongst the rest of the teams. The journey was a somewhat quiet one due to feelings towards a certain Uchiha. Those among the retrieval team had still not fully forgiven him of what happened. Though the other members of the Rookie 12 had no problem, Hinata was also with the members of the retrieval team in their dislike of the Uchiha. In fact, when Hinata first saw the boy leaving the hospital, well, let's just say that she nearly sent him back into the hospital if it weren't for at least 7 Chunin holding her back. This technically earned her the scorn of all of Sasuke's fangirls, except for Sakura, who knew what she was going through. A few minutes later Akamaru began to pick up the scent. "Alright, good work, buddy. Kiba said as he patted the large dog on the back. Akamaru barked in joy at the praise he was getting. However, when they arrived to the area, which was a few miles of the main road, it wasn't a pretty sight. The entire field was littered with bodies of ninjas who still had kunai and shuriken embedded into their bodies and blank looks on their faces. Sakura put a hand to her mouth in horror, while Choji suddenly felt full in his stomach. Kakashi walked over to one of the ninjas and closed his eyes in respect. I'll send a message to Tsunade-sama to have someone retrieve the bodies. But I don't see the daimyo or his personal guards anywhere. Everyone turned to look at Shikamaru. Though Kurenai was the chosen leader of this mission, it was clear that the Nara was a better strategist out of all of them. Shikamaru sighed and muttered, troublesome, and after taking a breather said, it's clear that the daimyo isn't here, so that must mean he is alive. Of course we have no idea where he is. Akamaru can pick up his scent easily, Kiba said as the said dog barked. Then he began to sniff the ground for the scent. But when he found it, it was pointing in multiple directions. Everyone was baffled except for Shikamaru, who just sighed. I feared as much. It seems like they're trying to baffle us or just buying time to get the daimyo. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. You think they're planning a trap? He asked. Giving the Uchiha a glare, Shikamaru continued. Yes, it could very well be a trap. I think they're trying to split us up and take us out separately, as I originally said, or they could be trying to buy time. But I already know which way the daimyo went. How did you figure it out? Sakura asked, shocked on how fast the Nara thought everything out. Shikamaru sighed and pointed the ground littered with bodies. You can tell that these guys were trying to draw the attackers away from the main road. That means the daimyo was most likely in a carriage, so it could never have gone in any of the other directions. However, if we all go in one group, I'm pretty sure the enemy will be able to regroup faster, and we may have some difficulties. Then he turned towards Kurenai. I suggest that each team takes a different route that follows the main road. That way we can easily get to the daimyo without alerting the enemy to our actual presence. Everyone looked at Kurenai, waiting for her actual orders. Finally she said, we'll do as Shikamaru suggested. Team Kurenai will go ahead of the others and try to catch up with the daimyo. Team Kakashi and Team Guy will hold the rear while Team Asuma moves on the sides of the road. Everyone nodded and headed off. However, what they didn't know was that they were being watched. Crouching on a tree branch was a ninja wearing a black and white jumpsuit. Strapped to it were arm pads, leg pads and shoulder pads. He had short, spiky red hair and a helmet that covered his eyes. Strapped to his back were dual swords, and around his waist was a headband that had the symbol of a swirling circle. Once the Konoha shinobi were gone, he spoke through his radio. They have begun to move, Sozo-sama. Understood, keep an eye on them. Attack when only necessary, Senritsu. The man on the other side of the radio said. The man nodded and then disappeared into the shadows. Back with Team Kurenai, the five of them had still found no signs of the daimyo. Kurenai began to worry that he might have actually been killed, but still they kept up their search. If they failed, then this would greatly disgrace their village to the other great countries, and the successor might even bankrupt them too, for the loss of the current daimyo. Suddenly Shino said, Kurenai-sensei, my bugs have found him. Which way? Kurenai asked. Shino listened to his bugs for a moment before replying, straight ahead of us, sensei. Sure enough, at least 2 miles after, the team along with the others finally reached the daimyo's escort, which consisted of a regiment of his army. At first suspicious of them, the soldiers finally grant them access to see the daimyo after seeing their headbands. The daimyo was pleased to see some Konoha ninja, especially when he recognized Asuma, a former member of the 12 Guardian Ninjas, and Kakashi, the famed copycat ninja. After offering his deepest apologies about the loss of the other ninjas, the now larger group began escorting the daimyo to the meeting point. But soon there was a loud rustling in one of the bushes, causing the ninjas to bring their guard up. Instead of an attack, however, it was another ninja, seriously wounded, and judging by his headband he was from Takigakure. Sakura immediately ran to his side and started to check his wounds along with Ino. These are wounds from a large weapon, a curved one nonetheless, Sakura said as she examined a large slash on the man's chest. Suddenly the ninja's eyes opened and then he tried to speak. Danger. Must hurry, daimyo's life is in jeopardy. Before anyone could say anything, a kunai flew out of nowhere and struck the shinobi in the heart. It got worse when they realized that there was an exploding tag attached to it. Moving as fast as they could, Sakura and Ino managed to get out of the way before the tag blew up and consumed the body in flames. Who threw that? Choji asked. Suddenly there was a sound of blades clashing. Everyone turned around to see said blocking a mysterious ninja, who was Senritsu, who was trying to attack the daimyo. Soon more ninjas, who were wearing a similar version that Konoha wears, except blue, appeared all armed and ready for a fight. Asuma attacked Senritsu, thus freeing Sai from his burden. Senritsu pulled out his other sword and attacked Asuma, the both locked in combat. Speaking quickly, Kurenai shouted to Kakashi. Kakashi, our teams will go and assist the waterfall's daimyo. The others will stay here and hold off these attackers. Kakashi nodded, and after sharing the message to Sakura, Sai and Sasuke, the 8 of them headed off. Several of the enemy ninjas tried to stop them but were immediately smacked to the side by Lee and Guy, allowing their friends to head off without interference. Asuma backed away from Senritsu, who began to form some hand signs. Right-un, Tenku no Kihatsu. Enlightenment of the heavens, and suddenly several lightning bolts fell from the sky, heading towards Asuma. The Jonin managed to dodge them, but then Senritsu used another jutsu. Dayton, sure no heya. Death room. Then 3 walls appeared around Asuma, cutting off his escape route, and allowing Senritsu to make a straight beeline towards him with his sword out. But before he could deal the blow, a large fist nearly crushed him, forcing him to jump out of the way. Asuma smirked as Choji stood by his side. Back with the other group, Kurenai and Kakashi's team discovered blood along the ground, soon followed by bodies, which they identified as Takigakyo's shinobis. Kakashi began to wonder who could have taken out so many of these elite warriors so easily. His thoughts were cut off when Kiba told them to stop. When they did, they found themselves in front of the building that was to be used for the peace signing, except now it was in ruins. Bodies littered the ground around the building and the walls were smeared with blood and weapons were everywhere. Kiba, what's wrong? Hinata asked her teammate. Kiba was rubbing Akamaru's head reassuringly. Akamaru is smelling a huge amount of chakra and a massive killer intent nearby. It has him completely freaked out. A dark chuckle caught their attention and all of them looked up at the building to see a man standing on the roof of the building. He wore a purple chest plate and a sleeveless shirt underneath it. He also had black pants too and long red hair. His eyes were a dark blue and in his hand was a scythe. His face showed a sick smile and he was letting out a large killer intent, but not the one that Akamaru was sensing. Then something caught Sakura's attention and she started to back away in fear. Oh look, eye in his hand. Everyone looked and gasped. In the man's left hand was the head of the daimyo, blood still dripping out of it. The daimyo's face was one of pure fear and terror. The man smirked and threw the head down below, causing a loud smack as it hit the ground right in front of the Konoha ninjas. Kakashi noticed that there was a box, sealed, also tied to the head. Please give that to Tsunade-chan, a gift from my lord to her. The man said and disappeared. Kakashi carefully picked up the head and the box before turning to the others. We should notify Tsunade-sama at once about this and check on the others too. The mission was a success/failure. They had managed to save the fire daimyo's life at the cost of the waterfall's daimyo, along with the large loss of life to add as well. Takigakyo was in an uproar about what happened, but there was nothing Tsunade could do about the situation except take the blame and give half of the ryo that the fire daimyo gave her to the other village as a way of saying sorry. However, what caused for real alarm was the box that Kakashi brought back with him. Tsunade ordered for him, Shizen and herself to be the only people in the room once the seal was removed. When it was, they discovered 2 things. One was a headband, with a symbol that they recognized. That's the symbol of the Uzushigokure. Shizen stuttered in absolute shock. But it was the second thing that really caught them off guard. Its impact caused Tsunade to slump back into her chair in shock and disbelief. Kakashi for once had nothing to say as his eye widened in horror. Shizen put a hand over her mouth to cover her gasp of shock. It was the first Hokage's necklace, the same one Tsunade gave to Naruto. Elsewhere in the Whirlpool country, a man, the same one from before, entered the throne room of the Whirlpool daimyo, who was currently sitting on his throne drinking some green tea. He appeared to be very young, perhaps in his teens, and he had yellow spiky hair and blue eyes. He wore a short-sleeve orange coat with black flames at the bottom, with light ninja armor underneath it that was colored red. Leaning to the left was a katana and on the right was a golden kakura. He had a bored look on his face as well. The long-haired man walked up to the daimyo and bowed. Your Majesty, I have completed the mission to which you have given me. The daimyo of the country that hosted Takigakure is dead. The young man nodded, a smile on his face. And what of the fire daimyo Yoko? Yoko shook his head. I'm afraid neither myself nor Senritsu were able to kill him. A shame really, it would have been a good feast. His daimyo rubbed his chin and then asked, We shall wait until we make a move on one of the 5 great countries. Has Soza led the army towards Takigakure? Yes, your Majesty, by now they must have crossed the border, and are heading there with all speed. Yoko said, then he added, and I deliver the message as well, Naruto-sama. Naruto smiled. Good work, you may retire to your quarters. You've earned it. Yoko bowed his head. You honor me, he said as he left. Then he paused and turned around to face Naruto. Also be careful when releasing your killer intent, Naruto-sama. I could sense it from the fire country. Naruto smirked as Yoko walked away. Tsunade waited until the council was seated and quiet. With them were also Shizen, Kakashi and Jiraiya. Also there was head of Root Danzo. Once people were listening, did Tsunade speak. I've summoned you to discuss about the incident concerning the daimyo of the country that houses Takigakure. Koharu, one of the elders and the late 3rd Hokage's teammate, spoke up. Why? Are we in danger of being invaded? Tsunade shook her head. No. The reason why I summoned you all was because we may have found out who is responsible for this, or at least the theory. When no one said anything, she continued. We believe it may be the Whirlpool Nation, in other words the Uzumaki clan. There was silence for a few seconds before the whole room exploded with voices, people talking to each other and asking questions. When Tsunade calmed everyone down, Hamaru, the other elder, spoke. How is this possible, Tsunade? No word has been heard from the Whirlpool Nation in years. Tsunade sighed. I know, which makes this all the more difficult. If it really is them, then we have a problem, especially since they wielded the Buki Rukokiro, weapons of the Six Paths. Some of the younger civilian members had blank looks on their faces. Jiraiya sighed and explained, "They are powerful weapons that were wielded by the Sage of the Six Paths, and the Uzumaki clan acquired them somehow, apparently during the clan's founding. Also the samurai of the country have a special division called the Alpha Corps, elite samurai who wear armor that negates ninjutsu and genjutsu. Also their ninjas are very skilled in combat as well. If they attacked us in full force we wouldn't last a week." A lot of the council members were getting nervous. Finally one of them spoke. "Isn't there something that we can do?" Tsunade shook her head. "I'm afraid not. We did have an alliance with them once, but since communication was lost so many years ago I don't know what would happen, and we have no idea who their leader is right now, so negotiations would be near to impossible." Danzo felt like there was more to this than Tsunade was letting on. "I'm sure you have more to reveal to us than just that piece of bad news." Tsunade glared at the old man before pulling something out of her pocket and placing it on the desk. When she moved her hand she revealed it was the first Hokage's necklace. "I believe Naruto Uzumaki may be among their ranks." This earned some gasps from the whole council, each with different feelings in them. Danzo was angry that not only was the boy alive, but not under his control like he had planned all those years ago. The clan leaders were feeling regret of not standing up for the boy all those years ago, as it was clear he might come back to the village for revenge. The civilians were angry that the boy was not dead and scared of what would happen if he came back. Shikaka, head of the Nara clan, sighed. "This is such a drag. Though we shouldn't be relaxed, I doubt that Naruto would want to attack the village. He loved Konoha too much despite certain people's harsh words towards him." He said the last part while looking at the civilian section. Tsunade sighed. "I hope you're right, Shikaka-san, I really do." Then she turned to the rest of the council. "What has happened here is to be kept a secret until we can think of some way to protect ourselves. None of you can tell a soul out here whatsoever. Is that clear?" Everyone shook their heads and they were dismissed, escorted by Shizen. Kakashi also left as well, leaving just Tsunade and Jiraiya, and Taunton. The Toad Sage looked at his old teammate. "Any idea of how to deal with this, Tsunade?" he asked. Tsunade shook her head. "No idea. Right now I need a drink." As she poured herself one she thought to herself, "What's happened to you, Naruto?" Souza Uzumaki, uncle to Naruto Uzumaki, watched from a distance as the village hidden in the waterfall burned out in the distance. He wore a black bandana with Yuzushiobiku's symbol on it. His red hair went down to his neck and he wore a blue shirt underneath a black coat. Also he had black gloves and black pants too. Strapped to his back was a large nodachi. This reminded him a lot of the stories he heard as a kid when a force of both Kumonin and Iwanin attacked Yuzushiobikure. He remembered how he and his sister had fled with their parents, and when they decided to live in Konoha. However, he began to develop a hatred for Konoha. They were their allies, why didn't they come to Yuzu's aid? And when he heard that Kushina's son was still alive he wanted to make all haste to Konoha and retrieve him. However, he knew that Naruto would be safer in Konoha until the Whirlpool country was properly rebuilt. He also knew that he wouldn't force Naruto to do anything that wasn't in his best interest. It was Naruto's decision to do this, and Souza would help Naruto see the world united under his rule. A Jonin suddenly appeared from behind him. "Souza-san, I've come with a report." Souza nodded. "Speak," he ordered. The Jonin nodded. "Yes, sir. We've taken out their leader with ease and are currently rounding up any of the wounded or civilians and taking them to the camps. But a small yet significant group is holding out at the center of the village. And they're being led by their Jinchuriki, Fu, container of the Seven Tails." Souza sighed. He wished that the girl had turned over to their side when he first met her. But alas, she was determined to make a difference in her village and have her comrades recognize her as a fellow ninja. "I will deal with her. Surround them and cut them off from retreating. We need to finish this quick before the country chooses a new daimyo." Fu was breathing deeply as she took out another kunai. The enemy, whoever they were, was completely destroying the village. So far only 20 of them, including herself, were still standing and able to fight. But for how long she had no idea, especially now that Shibuki, the only person to treat her nicely, was dead. "Fu, the enemy seems to be encircling us," a Jonin reported. True enough, instead of attacking directly the enemy was encircling them, cutting them off from escaping. However, through the flames engulfing the village a single person could be seen making his way towards them. But the worst part was the killer intent he was giving off. It was incredible. Hell, several experienced Jonin were having trouble keeping conscious just from the mere presence of the man. Fu, however, retained her composure and stood firm, holding a brave face on. Souza paused and looked at them. Then he spoke. "Shinobi of Takigakure, surrender to the might of the Uzumaki, and your lives shall be spared." Fu smirked and said, "Don't underestimate the power of Takinin bastard." The other ninjas nodded and prepared for a fight. Souza merely sighed and raised his fist, getting ready to do a punch. Closing his eyes, Souza said, "Then you leave me no choice." His eyes open. "But to put you down like rebels." Then he thrust his fist forward, and when he did, a powerful sonic blast radiated from the punch, blasting some, if not all, the ninjas into the air. The blast even began to shatter the ground beneath them. Fu, however, remained where she was and charged towards Souza. "This guy is strong," she thought. Better use version 2 and finish him off. Suddenly red chakra began to cover her body and became darker. Soon her entire body was covered in red chakra and she sprouted all 7 of her wings. She used her increased speed to try and tackle the man, but Souza managed to get out of the way. Then before Fu could react, Souza landed a powerful punch into her rib, even managing to break the chakra cloak that surrounded her. The resulting impact caused her to crash into the ground and created a small barrier. But Fu wasn't done yet. Using her remaining willpower she began to form a tail beast bomb. Souza saw this and lifted his leg and brought it down onto her chest hard, crushing her lungs and stomach. Now all Fu had left to say was large amount of blood coming out of her mouth. The last thing she saw before darkness consumed her was Souza opening a scroll. As Souza watched the light fade from Fu's eyes he opened the scroll and performed several hand signs. Grand Chain Imprisonment Jutsu, and suddenly dozens of chains began to pour out of the scroll and towards Fu. When they touched her a red sphere of demon chakra began to slowly come out. When it was fully out of Fu's body the chains began to wrap around it until it was completely covered up in chains and pulled back into the scroll, which Souza promptly rolled back up. Don't worry Komiai-san, you'll be well treated amongst the Uzumaki, he said. Back in Konoha in the Hyuga compound, Hinata was hard at work practicing her gentle fist style. Her jacket was off thus revealing her fishnet and blue shirt underneath it. Sweat ran down her face as she continued training. As she did she thought of Naruto, and how proud he would be of her, and how strong she got that is, if he was even still alive. Hinata, a familiar voice said. Hinata turned around to see her father, Hayashi, staring at her. The look in his eye meant that he had to talk to her about something important, and something bad. Can we talk in my office? He asked. Hinata nodded and followed him towards his private studies. When they arrived Hayashi sat in his chair while Hinata stood before him, a glare in her face. Hayashi did not let this go unnoticed but nevertheless continued. It has come to my attention that you have severely beaten many villagers of Konoha in the past few years. Hinata raised an eyebrow. And you decide to discuss this with me now? She asked. Hayashi's eye twitched but remained calm. I've only denied talking to you about it because I would have figured that you would have ceased this infatuation over Naruto Uzumaki even though it's been 3 years since his death. Hinata glared at her father. We don't know for sure if he is dead, she said defiantly. The head of the Hyuga clan shook his head. Whether or not he's alive is not the case here. The fact is that if you continue this absurd behavior I will be forced to take drastic measures to make sure that you do not tarnish the name of the Hyuga. Hinata clenched her fist but then relaxed it. I shall be sure to keep that in mind, father. May I go now? She asked defiantly. Hayashi couldn't help but wonder at what happened to her daughter these past 3 years. A good bet it was that fox brat. He thought to himself but said nothing. Yes, you are dismissed, he said. Hinata did a quick bow and headed out the door, not even looking back at her father who still eyed her carefully. Back in the whirlpool, more precisely at the main harbor of the country, was Naruto Uzumaki, watching as the last ship was being loaded up with supplies and the men were boarding it. Naruto had a look of determination and he stood straight up without bending his body. Naruto-sama, a voice said. Naruto turned around to see a man approaching him. He was about his size and appeared to be in his mid-20s. He wore a red military uniform and a small blue cape. He had a sword strapped to his side and had red curly hair. He was Senryaku Uzumaki, head of the Whirlpool Intelligence Division. Ah, Senryaku-san, I was wondering when you would get here. The man had a look of urgency on his face. I implore you, Naruto-sama. Please remain within the palace. If you go out to the other nations then I cannot promise you your safety, Senryaku said. Naruto smiled as he continued to watch the ship being loaded. I assure you I shall be fine. Besides, a girl I've been thinking about is there, and I want to see her again, Naruto said. Senryaku raised an eyebrow and smirked. You mean Hinata Hyuga? It was not a question. Naruto nodded and boarded the ship, leaving his strategist behind. Before he got on fully he looked down at Senryaku. I trust the mobilization of our army to you, Senryaku-san. The man bowed. I shall not fail you, Naruto-sama. It was raining in Konoha that day, the day Naruto returned home. People did not mind the rain. They were used to it after all. People walked across the village carrying on with their daily lives without a care for the world. However, standing on the wall that surrounded the village, 4 people could be seen in hoods were staring down at Konoha. The one in the middle, for a brief moment, showed red eyes until his hood once more hid them. With a wave of his hand all 4 of them moved out into the village. Tsunade was in her office, staring out the window. Something's not right, she thought to herself as Shizen came in. Noticing the look in her master's eyes, Shizen asked, is something wrong, Tsunade-sama? The 5th Hokage turned around, the look still on her face. I was playing a game of solitary and I won, Tsunade said to Shizen. Confused, Shizen raised an eyebrow. Tsunade sighed and continued. I almost never win at anything, which means something big is going to happen, the Hokage said in a serious voice. Shizen finally understood and began to worry. Tsunade was right. Usually when she won something, well, that was like a bad omen, to be more exact. Only Kami could predict what might happen next. Suddenly a Chunin arrived, a disturbed look on his face. Tsunade-sama, one of our outer patrol was found dead about an hour ago. Tsunade's eyes widened at the news. Were any traces of which direction the attackers went to found? She asked. The Chunin shook his head. No, Tsunade-sama. But our best guess is that they were heading towards Konoha. However, the barrier team had reported no disturbances with the barrier. The Chunin reported. Put all teams on alert but do not make this public. Tsunade ordered. The last things that we need are the villagers going into panic. The Chunin nodded and disappeared. Shizen, contact Hayashi Hyuga and tell him we need of some of his best men. I believe that the Byakugan might be useful in this matter. Yes ma'am, Shizen said and ran off. Back at the Hyuga compound, Hinata was busy training outside in the Hyuga's private training ground despite the rain. In fact, the rain helped hide Hinata's tears, because today was Naruto's birthday. Usually these days on his birthday, the people of Konoha would be celebrating his death. However, the rain cancelled all their plans to do that. Suddenly one of the servants called out to her, Hinata-sama. Your father and the elders wish to speak to you, he said. Hinata paused from her training and shook her head and began to walk into the compound. As she did, she had this strange feeling, like something bad was going to happen if she kept on going. But she shook it off. If there were danger, then she would face it like Naruto would. But when she entered the meeting room, she only saw the elders there, but not her father. Wondering what was going on, Hinata asked, Where is my father? I was told that he had summoned me. One of the elders, Fukugen, sighed and said, Your father did not summon you, Hinata. Hinata noticed the lack of sama in his voice. We did. Then out of nowhere 2 Hyuga guards appeared from behind and grabbed Hinata by the other arms, and then struck her pressure points on her shoulders so she couldn't struggle. Hinata went limp for a moment before picking her head up and glared at the elders. What is the meaning of this? Hinata demanded. Fukugen got up and spoke while performing hand signs. We've agreed that your actions these past few years have been unacceptable and are putting the clan's reputation at risk. So it is decided that we must use an alternative method. One that Hayashi-sama has been reluctant to give you due to your position as heir to the clan. Hinata's eyes widened, as she knew what he meant. They planned to place the caged seal on her. She desperately began to struggle out of her captive's grip, as the elder got closer to her more and more. But just as he was about to finish the jutsu, something impaled him from behind, killing him instantly. Before anyone else could react, several tentacles waved around the room, striking everyone into unconsciousness, including her restrainers. When it was all over, she was the only one standing, well, her and her savior. He was about average size. His clothing was mostly gray and white, along with a mask and cape that he wore too. All Hinata could see of him were his blue eyes. Despite having saved her from a life of enslavement, she still had no idea who this man was. So she quickly activated her Byakugan and got into the gentle fist stance. However, the man made no move to attack. Instead, he kneeled before Hinata. Hinata-san, my name is Higaho Uzumaki. My lord has sent me to you as a messenger. He wishes you to join us, he said. Hearing the word Uzumaki, Hinata quickly relaxed her body. You're an Uzumaki? She asked. The man raised his head and nodded. Then she continued, Then that means you know Naruto Uzumaki? When he shook his head, she almost cried, though the tears were forming already. She could see Naruto, and he was alive too. Higaho lifted his head. Yes, Naruto-sama is with us. In fact, he should be sending out a message soon. Tsunade was looking through the reports she was getting now from animal messengers that outside patrols were being attacked by what they described as a red swordsman. What the hell is going on here? Tsunade thought. First one patrol and now another is killed. I'm wondering if maybe it's better just to have all forces to relocate back into the village and wait until this rainstorm goes away. Suddenly Shizen came bursting through the door, or more like tumbling in. Before Tsunade could ask what was going on, a man came in. He wore a crimson leather coat like described in the reports. His hair was black, but it appeared to have been dyed that way. But most of all, he wielded a black katana with red writing on it. Who the hell are you? Tsunade asked as she got into a stance while Shizen got back up. The man just grunted and gripped his sword with both hands. Crimson whiplash, he cried, and when he swung his sword, a red chakra line headed straight towards Tsunade. The Hokage flipped the desk into the air, which took most of the damage, but Tsunade was still flung backwards and out the window. Tsunade-sama, Shizen cried as she grabbed Taunton and jumped out the window to follow. Tsunade was not seriously injured, thanks to her ninja and medical skills. Soon other shinobi and Shizen joined her and formed a defensive circle around their Hokage. Just as they were doing that, the man walked up to the window. Everyone be careful. This man has some weird jutsus. The man smirked. I am Futiki Uzumaki, he said, and continued while the people down below gasped. And all I was supposed to do was get you out here so you could see him, he said as he pointed upwards. Tsunade looked up at the Hokage monument, and when he saw the person, she gasped. Joining her soon was the whole of Rookie 12 and their senseis, except for Hinata, of course. They looked up as well, followed by everyone else, and gasped at what they saw, for above the fourth Hokage's head were 2 people. One of them appeared to be in his late teens and wore a green sweatshirt with the hood over his face, but they could still see the blue eyes and a faint bit of brown hair. He wore gray pants too, and on his hands was brass knuckles, but it was the second person that caught their attention. For he was none other than, and Naruto? Sakura asked, not sure to be relieved or frightened of her friend's return. Naruto's face showed no emotion, nothing that the old Naruto once had. But there was one thing they saw, hatred. Pure hatred in those crystal blue eyes was all that was shown. Then all of a sudden they turned red like a demon. That's when he started speaking. People of Konoha, for your crimes against both the Uzumaki clan and the Whirlpool country, you will soon face the full might of our clan and country as a whole. Know this, for I am Naruto Uzumaki, Kitsune of the Six Paths. And with that Naruto vanished from the statue, followed by Shigeki and Futiki Uzumaki. They left the people of Konoha scared, in awe and sorrow. From atop of a building with her hood over her head, Hinata watched the whole thing occur with Higaho behind her. She knew what that meant for Konoha, and right now her fate was certain. If she stayed here, then the elders would brand her as a traitor, and even be more desperate to place the caged bird seal on her. But with Naruto, she could live a life with the boy she fell in love with. So with no other alternative, Hinata began to follow Higaho out of the village. Outside of Konoha, Hinata followed Higaho deeper into the forest north of the village, where people usually don't go. In fact, by then Hinata could no longer see Konoha, but she didn't care. All that she cared about was seeing Naruto again. We've arrived, Higaho said. Sure enough, they soon entered a clearing where a large campsite was currently in. The place was filled with samurais and ninjas that bore the crest of the whirlpool and Uzushiobikure, and as they entered the site, Hinata realized that the area was covered in a barrier, protecting them from being detected. When the people saw her, they all bowed as she passed by them. Soon Higaho led her to a large tent in the center of the campsite. Naruto-sama is in here and is waiting for you, the man said as he opened the tent flap. Hinata nodded and walked inside just as Higaho was closing the flap. When she got her bearings, she saw Naruto sitting right in front of her, looking at a map of the world. He turned around, and when he saw Hinata, he gave her a smile that made a blush spread across her cheek. Hinata, he murmured, and walked towards her, as she did the same. Soon the two were embracing each other in a hug. Hinata had tears going down her face, taking in his scent, one that she had missed for a long time. When they backed away from each other, Naruto took a good hard look at her before saying, "I'm sorry." Hinata raised an eyebrow, confused. "About what?" "About not seeing the truth," Naruto said. "All my life I've been going after the girl who didn't give a damn about me when I should have focused on the only girl who had any feelings for me. And for that I'm sorry." Naruto placed one of his hands onto her cheek and began rubbing it. But Hinata stopped him and put her own hand over his. "It's not your fault, Naruto-kun. It's mine. I shouldn't have been so shy," she said. Naruto smiled and rested his forehead against hers. "Well, none of that matters now. I have you and you have me, and I plan to keep it that way." And with that Naruto pulled Hinata in for a kiss, and all Hinata could feel was pure bliss. Hokage Mansion. Back in Konoha it was a different story. People were scared, angry, and in panic. Shinobis were doing their best to keep some sort of order amongst the village, while Tsunade had summoned a meeting of the council. They were in utter outrage, demanding that something be done about the incident. "Why hasn't something been done about this yet?" yelled a member of the civilian council. Tsunade sighed before replying, "The reason is because we have no idea if Naruto is going to attack now or not." "Would you rather have half of our forces heading out in a wild goose chase?" troublesome Shikaka said. "Naruto wouldn't do something so rash like suddenly attacking us. More likely he'll try and buy time until his forces grow to a larger scale. Indeed, this is most likely just a way of worrying the people, to make them think that he will strike soon. He will most likely go after countries that do not possess ninja villages, or the more weaker villages." Shibi Abrama retorted. Tsunade nodded before speaking. "Agreed, but now we have another problem." She said the last part while looking at Hayashi. "The disappearance of Hinata Hyuga." Hayashi flinched a little but spoke. "I may know the cause of her disappearance." All eyes were on him. Apparently the elders had grown tired of her constant beatings on other people for insulting Uzumaki. They had intended to place the caged bird seal on her by force in order to keep her under control. The results were all the elders were injured and one was killed. There were some gasps from the civilian councils along with a few glares from the clan leaders towards Hayashi. Tsunade sighed and rubbed her temple, clearly not pleased with this news. "For now we just have to be wary when we send shinobi out of the village, and hopefully we can work out some kind of deal with Naruto to spare the village and the country." "That is impossible," a monotone voice replied. Everyone turned towards the source of the noise and saw 7 people wearing black suits underneath a white coat similar to Naruto's but with gray capes over those. They also wore a hood and a mask to cover their faces too. The citizens got up and backed away from them while the ninjas got into defensive positions. "Who the hell are you?" some of the Inazaka clan snarled. One of the masked figures stepped forward. "We are the heralds of Naruto-sama, and we have come with a message from his mouth." When none of the Konoha ninjas said anything, he continued. "In 5 months all 5 great villages shall be wiped off the face of the map." And with that they shimmered away from the room, leaving a haunted feeling above the council and the Hokage's heads. Konoha 12. Elsewhere in Konoha, the rookie 12, or what was left of it, were speaking amongst themselves about the whole events on one of the training grounds. Some of them, like Shikamaru, Sakura, Sai and Niji, said nothing, while others, like Ino, Tenten, Choji, and Lee, were speaking out more than the others. Naruto wouldn't really destroy the village. Would he? Ino asked. Neji shrugged. We can't say for sure, but it has been 3 years. Who knows what has been going on through his head? He replied. I bet it was one of those other Uzumaki guys who messed with him. Tenten retorted. No, Sasuke said, I think it was Naruto's choice to do this. Neji glared at him. And how would you know? He asked angrily. Sasuke shrugged. Well, how would you react if the village that abused you for years kept the secret that your clan was still alive for so long? He asked. The others had to admit that was a pretty good point, which made them feel more down. Finally Tenten asked, what do we do about Hinata? Neji sighed. There's nothing we really can't do. Unless Tsunade gives us a mission to bring her back, the clan will never welcome her due to the death of an elder. We can only pray that she is somewhere safe. Everyone nodded at that just as an ANBU suddenly appeared before the group. Without wasting time he said, you are to report to Hokage-sama at once for a special mission. After that he disappeared. An hour later all of Konoha 12 were kneeling before the Hokage on top of the mansion. She had a serious look on her face as well as letters that she gave to Shizen, who passed them out to Shikamaru, Sasuke, Neji and Shino. As you know, a new enemy threatens not just our village but others. She said the last part with grief, not believing that Naruto had become an enemy. I've decided that a meeting of the 5 great Kages is needed. Thus I'm sending your teams out to deliver the messages to the other villages. I would use messenger birds, but they would be too vulnerable for the Yuzunin to attack. Team Kakashi, you shall go to Krigakure. Team Asuma shall go to Suna. Team Kurenai shall go to Iwagakure. And Team Gai shall go to Kyomogakure. Now go! And with that all the ninjas jumped off the mansion and towards the village gate except for Team Kurenai. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Finally Kiba spoke. Tsunade-sama, what are we going to do about Hinata? Without her our team is one man down. Tsunade sighed. I understand, Kiba. I've already sent out several teams to find her, but right now you guys must focus on delivering this message. Understand? Shino and Kiba nodded while Akamaru whimpered, and soon all 3 of them headed off. Naruto's tent. Naruto smirked as he heard the footsteps approaching his tent. Hinata had already gone to bed in another section of it so the meeting wouldn't disturb her. Soon 7 people entered the tent, the same on that were at the council meeting. Kazuya Uzumaki, I assume that it went well? One of the hooded men took off his mask and his hood, revealing his face. He was a young man, probably in about his late teens, early 20s. He had long dark blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. His skin was tan but not too tan. He, followed by the others, kneeled before Naruto. Yes, your majesty. We have delivered the message, and as you predicted the Hokage has sent out messengers to the other 4 villages. By your command we can set out and intercept them, Kazuya said. Naruto smirked, leave that to me. I want to see how strong they got these past few years. I'm assigning you to guard Hinata-chan until she arrives safely to the Whirlpool Nation. Kazuya looked up. And you, my lord? He asked. I shall stay here for a while, perhaps visit some of the other villages or assist our forces in taking over the smaller countries. Naruto smiled at the thought. Soon this world shall be under the Uzumaki, under the true children of the Sage of the 6 Paths. Senryaku stared at a map of the world with little figures standing on it. Each one represented the forces of other nations and their own. So far fate was shining down on them. None of the countries had taken the death of a daimyo, or the seizing of his country seriously. They didn't even alert their shinobi villages to prepare for war. The stupidity of these people is incredible. Senryaku thought. No wonder Naruto-sama was able to unify the western nations under Whirlpool rule. When Naruto had been brought back to Yuzushiogakure, the village and the country were almost back their prime. The Uzumaki clan reunited under Sosa's leadership and managed to repair most of the country's economics, politics and military branches. But it was Naruto, now fueled with new determination, was what brought the Whirlpool to even greater heights. His desire to rebuild everything and unite all under one peaceful rule allowed him to study his clan's scrolls and learn thousands of jutsus. He even managed to control Kurama's chakra and partner with the fox. After that he began seizing the country's neighboring Whirlpool, either through diplomacy or conquest, usually the latter since many thought that the newly reformed country wasn't a threat. Any word from His Majesty? A voice asked. Senryaku looked up and saw a man enter the room. He was in his 40s and had long white hair. He wore a red robe with red armor under it. He had a small amount of facial hair as well. Hankun, I am glad you could make it. Naruto-sama is still in the eastern part of the world, assisting with the conquering of the other shinobi nations. But he has requested that your assistance in striking the land of water from the coastline and then proceed in applying pressure onto Kirigakure into mobilizing their forces, in a way to our advantage. For that our Majesty has trusted this to you. Han looked at the map and nodded. Then I shall not fail him, he said. Like Han, many people of the Whirlpool Nation were fanatically loyal to Naruto, especially the members of the Uzumaki clan. Men would eagerly line up to join the samurai army while others would strive to become ninjas to better serve their nation and village. Unlike other rulers, Naruto was more caring towards his people and actually cared what they thought. Senryaku nodded, but His Majesty does not want you to take immediate action until he gives the order. He does not wish to send in forces in case his army needs the extra troops. So when you arrive at about 500 miles from the coast, just stand by and await orders from Naruto-sama," he said to Han. Before he could say more, a servant suddenly came running in. "My lords! My lords! The escort carrying Hinata-sama has arrived." Hinata looked out the window of the carriage, taking in the sights of the country fields. She still couldn't believe how fast they got here. They, as in she and Kazage, used a large scroll to teleport themselves from their current position back in the fire country to end up in the royal harbor of the whirlpool country. The Uzumaki clan was certainly a powerful clan if they could do something like that so easily. But back to the view of the country fields, which still amazed Hinata. It was much beautiful and peaceful than the lands of the fire country. Children were playing out in the field without a care in the world. Men and women were calmly working out in the fields or talking to one another. "It's so beautiful," she said in a soft voice. Kazage, who was sitting next to her in the carriage, nodded in agreement. "It is. And we owe it all to Naruto-sama," he said as he looked out his window. This used to be a barren land with bandits assaulting weak farmers who barely had anything to begin with. But when Naruto, he solved all our problems in just a year, with his uncle right behind him to do so, and for that we all pledge our loyalty to Naruto, especially us the Monsvorriders. German for Moon Vanguards. Hinata looked at him curiously. "Monsvorriders?" she asked. Kazage nodded. "Yes. We are a group of elite ninjas hand-picked personally by Naruto-sama. We are also given new abilities by Naruto-sama himself. As such we act as bodyguards or as the spearhead of most of our attacks. That is why he entrusted me to protect you until we reach the palace. In fact, here we are." Hinata felt the carriage making a turn on the road, causing her to look out the window. She gasped at the sight. The palace was huge. It had a large tower in the center with several smaller ones surrounding it. There were at least 5 layers of walls defending it, and the color was red, orange, black and gold. At the entrance to the larger tower were a number of guards dressed in red and gold samurai armor, and they wielded odd-looking spears, and with them were 2 differently dressed men waiting for them. When the carriage stopped, Kazage got out on his side, walked around to Hinata's side and opened her door. Then he offered her a hand, which she took and guided her off out of the carriage. The 2 other men bowed before her, one of them speaking. "Hinata-sama, it is an honor to meet you. I am Senaraku Uzumaki, chief strategist of the Whirlpool's army, and this is Han Uzumaki, one of the generals." The man named Han grunted in response. Hinata blushed at how formal they were being to her. "Thank you Senaraku-kun for welcoming me here," she replied. You can stand up now." Senaraku nodded as he and Han stood up. Then he said, "You are as kind and polite as Naruto-sama says, Hinata-sama. Please, I am sure that you are tired from your trip. The maids have set up a room for you to rest in and the guards shall escort you." Hinata nodded and allowed herself to be guided by several of the armored guards into the palace. A few hours later Hinata was dressed in a white nightgown that the maids had given her. Soon she was escorted into a large room with a king-size bed in it. It had several purple pillows with golden trims on them. The purple sheet on it looked very inviting to her as her energy started to go away. Before she went over to the bed she looked at the maid. If it is okay, I would like to write a letter to Naruto-kun after I rested." The maid bowed her head. "Of course, Hinata-sama. Just let us know when you awake." And with that she walked out of the room. Then Hinata walked over to the bed and gracefully got into it, covering herself up with the blanket. She quickly snuggled deeper into the bed and with her last thoughts on Naruto, fell into a deep sleep. Back with Naruto, his forces had finally regrouped with Sosa's forces, bringing them to the border of the land of bears, where the village hidden in the stars was. They had already sent ninjas to assassinate any guards on the borders in a certain area, so that their forces would be able to break through with ease. Their first target was Hashigakure. Destroying their ninja village would bring morality to a dropping point for the nation. It was a simple attack, using brute force to penetrate the village with enough force that the defenders would fall quickly, and then the destruction of their precious star made their moral drop to a point where they simply gave up. Soon all that was left was a small force of Hoshinin being led by their 4th Hashikage, Akahoshi. Naruto, a force of 50 Uzunins, were brought to face off against the 20 remaining Hoshinin and their Hashikage. Akahoshi had a broken arm and blood running down his face. "Bastard. You bastard," he murmured as he glared at Naruto. "What is the point of all this? Why invade us when we have done nothing to you?" Naruto smirked and drew his katana. "This is for the greater good of the world. And I know that you only took command for your own greed. Now kneel before me or suffer a death most humiliating," the blonde shinobi said. Akahoshi growled and took out a kunai. "Shinobi of Hashigakure, attack!" Then he charged, followed by the rest of the ninjas, all of them determined to go down fighting. Naruto smirked and sheathed his sword, and then performed some hand signs. Futon, fox's roar! Suddenly a large gust of wind appeared in the form of a fox's head, and headed straight towards the Hoshinin. The gust was so large and powerful that it obliterated all of them, including Akahoshi. As Naruto watched the wind die down, he ordered, "Gather up the prisoners and put them into camps. Once we have taken the palace we shall then begin reconstructing this village into another Uzushigakure." Back with Team Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura and Sai were making good progress on their way towards Kirigakure. From the moment of their departure from Konoha, the Uzunin had made no effort to stop them, nor was there signs of any other types of attacks. Sasuke did not like how there was no effort to stop them. He wanted a challenge right now. He was literally itching for a fight. Well, he got it when he heard someone yelled Kaitan, fire Astrid's jutsu. And suddenly several round-shaped fireballs came soaring down from the sky. Sasuke performed his own jutsu. Kaitan, Great Fireball Jutsu. The two fire jutsus collided with one another, canceling each other out. Soon Sasuke and his team saw their attacker standing on a branch. It was the same man who had been with Naruto back in Konoha, the one with the brass knuckles. My name is Shigeki Uzumaki, the man said. And by orders of Naruto-sama, I have been sent to deal with you and your mission. Then he rocketed off from his branch and charged towards the team. He moved so fast that none of the Konoha-nin had time to react. Shigeki struck Sasuke in the face while delivering several blows to Sai and Sakura with his fists. Sakura managed to recover the fastest, and jumped back towards Shigeki, already swinging a fist at him. The Uzumaki managed to dodge the first blow but was struck in the side by a kick from her leg. Shigeki managed to recover and then, focusing chakra into his fist, struck Sakura with a blow to the chest, causing her to cough out blood as she was sent flying towards a tree. Fortunately, Sai caught her in time while Sasuke went to engage Shigeki. Sasuke created a rakurai in his hand and tried to impale Shigeki. But Sasuke missed, allowing Shigeki to land a kick into the stomach. Sasuke, however, managed to pull out a kunai and deflected the attack and jumped back. Kaitan, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. He yelled as he formed the hand signs, and then he launched a barrage of small fireballs towards Shigeki. Somehow the Uzunin managed to dodge this attack and formed his own hand seals. Doton Earth Flows Spears Jutsu. And then Spear of Earth and Mud appeared from the ground and tried to impale Sasuke. But the Uchiha used lightning to stop the attack, but this allowed Shigeki to get close enough and land and blow into Sasuke's right shoulder. Sasuke, however, managed to use that to his advantage, by twisting his body, which allowed him to kick Shigeki in the face. Shigeki backed away a little, which allowed Sasuke to pull out his sword and charge the Uzunin. The ninja readied his brass knuckles and soon the fight became weapons against weapons. Sasuke had managed to cut Shigeki on the right side of his chest, while Shigeki managed to land several blows on Sasuke. Sai and Sakura soon joined in attacking the Uzunin. Sakura tried to kick him in the stomach, but Shigeki managed to do a jump in the air and dodge the attack effortlessly. But Sai then tried to strike Shigeki with his katana. However, the Uzunin managed to deflect it with his brass knuckles and then he grabbed Sai by the throat and threw him at a tree, with which he collided with. However, he was unprepared in the kick to the back that Sakura delivered, and it caused him to go skidding against the ground. He managed to recover quick enough to dodge another attack by Sakura and Sasuke together. Moving quickly, Shigeki grabbed Sasuke by the back of his head and headbutt him hard. Sasuke backed away stunned, giving Shigeki time to deal with Sakura, who was chagrining him. Doton Earth Walls Jutsu. And soon dozens of walls popped up out of the ground in front of Sakura, halting her attack. Raiton Bolt Shot Jutsu. Then Shigeki clenched his hands together into a gun and from the tip, fired a lightning bolt that went straight through each wall right towards Sakura. When it struck the surprised Kunoichi, she screamed as she was electrified and then fell backwards. But Shigeki grabbed her by the top of her coat and prepared to deliver another blow to her with his chakra-enhanced brass knuckles. But before he could do so, a hand grabbed his arm. He turned around just in time to see Sasuke deliver a chidori straight through his chest, causing blood to spill out of Shigeki. Shigeki coughed out some blood and dropped Sakura. Now then, Sasuke said as he kept his chidori inside Shigeki. I've avoided any vitals because I want to know what Naruto is planning and where did he get his powers, the Uchiha said. Shigeki coughed a little bit. And why would you want to know that? He asked breathlessly. Sasuke glared at the dying shinobi. So I can use that power to kill Itachi and avenge my clan, he said with a serious tone. Shigeki chuckled a little before coughing again. You will never obtain that power. It is not for someone outside the clan to use. Only Naruto-sama is worthy of using it. Cough, and I would never betray him, he shouted as he pulled the chidori out of his chest and tried to kick Sasuke in the face. But the Uchiha dodged it and got further away, which is exactly how Shigeki wanted it because then he disappeared in a flash, having used the body flicker technique to escape. Damn, Sasuke thought as he stared at the spot where Shigeki once stood. Then he proceeded to help Sakura and Sai. 3 days later after the event, Team Kakashi finally managed to reach Kirigakure. After allowing his teammates to heal themselves in one of the village's hospitals, Sasuke followed the Mizukige's assistant, Ao, to the Mizukige's office where she was. First Ao knocked on the door. Mizukige-sama, the messenger from Konoha is here to see you. Let him in, Meiterum said. Ao nodded and opened the door, allowing Sasuke to enter. Mei had to admit for a boy only in his teens, the last Uchiha was quite handsome. But nonetheless the Mizukige kept herself composed and replied, Greetings, Uchiha-san. To what do I owe the honor? Sasuke bowed. Mizukige-sama, I have a letter from Hokage-sama for an emergency summoning of the 5 Kages. It has to do with the current invading army throughout the countries. Mei nodded and took the letter, reading it slowly and carefully. When she was done, she looked back at Sasuke. Thank you for this information, Uchiha-san. Please let your Hokage know that I shall answer the summoning with all haste. For now, why don't you and your team rest here for a bit? I can tell that you three were in some sort of brawl. Sasuke bowed, thanking her, before being escorted out of the office by Ao. In Kumogakure, the Raikage was reading over the reports that he had received from scouts over the past few days. Word about a large army invading other countries had been going around a lot, and the daimyo of the Lightning Country became worried that this army might try and attack them, and he was beginning to doubt if his village could protect them. I was determined to make sure that did not happen, which is why he kept sending out patrols to the borders of the Lightning Country. Suddenly his assistant, Mabui, came in. Raikage-sama, there is a team of Konoha ninjas here to see you. They say they have a message from the Hokage. She said, raised an eyebrow. What would the Hokage want with him? He knew that the relation between their two villages was strained since the whole event with the Hyuga incident. Nevertheless, he might as well find out what she wanted. Send them in, he ordered. A few minutes later, 3 young ninjas came in. One of them even possessed the Byakugan, much to A's surprise. If Tsunade was willingly sending a messenger with the Byakugan, then this must be something important. The Byakugan user bowed his head before speaking. Greetings, Raikage-sama. I am Niji Hyuga and this is Rock Lee and Tenten. He said the last part while pointing to his teammates. We have a letter from Hokage-sama about a summoning of the Kages. Mabui took the letter and handed it over to the Raikage for him to read. I wasn't surprised when he read that the reason was because of the invading army, but he was surprised that Swana wanted to discuss it with the other Kages of the other great villages. He looked up at Niji. Very well, you may tell the Hokage I shall answer the summoning. You may rest here until you are ready to leave. Niji sent a look to the Raikage that was almost a glare. Thank you for your offer, Raikage-sama, but we must head back now so we may inform Tsunade-sama of this. Another reason was that he didn't trust Kumogakure at trying to steal the Byakugan again. Lee and Tenten got the message as well and followed Niji out of the office. In Iwagakure, the Tsuchikage, Anoki was sighing as he read the letter that was given to him by the 2 Konoha ninjas. While he was relieved that it had nothing to do with him and his village hiring Akatsuki so much, he didn't like how it involved him to leave the village, which could mean that this invading force could attack at any moment. But if he didn't go, then he might miss any valuable intel that Tsunade might have for this. Kiba and Shino watched as the Tsuchikage finished reading the letter and looked up at the two of them. Very well, he said in a gruff tone. You may tell your Hokage that I shall respond to the summoning. My aide shall escort you to the village gate. Kiba and Shino bowed while Akamaru barked in response, and soon the two left. Anoki stroked his beard, thinking something big was going to happen with this summoning of the 5 Kages. Shikamaru and his team caught their breaths as they finally reached the gate of Sunagakure, the village hidden in the sand. It had taken them at least 3 days to reach the village, and they were exhausted since they didn't have any sleep. The reason was because Shikamaru summarized that Naruto wouldn't waste time and allow them a break, so it was better to just move as fast as they could to the village. The guard stopped them and said, What business do leaf ninjas have here in Suna? Shikamaru sighed but replied, We're here to deliver an important message to the Kazekage from our Hokage. He knew that this guy was just doing his job, but sometimes it could be really troublesome dealing with the whole system of showing identity to them just so they could get in. After all, his girlfriend was the Kazekage's older sister for the love of Kami. And speaking of the devil, a familiar voice said, It's okay, you can let them through. Temari-san. Ino squealed as she ran to hug her fellow blonde. Temari chuckled and hugged Ino back. Ever since Temari and Shikamaru started dating, she had more time to hang out with Ino. The two had become fast friends since they had similar personalities and were good at bossing the boys around. So why are you guys here? The Sand Kanochi asked. What no hello for you own boyfriend? Shikamaru asked as he walked past the guard along with Choji. Temari rolled her eyes but gave a peck on Shikamaru's cheek. This earned a squeal from Ino and a groan from Choji. Shikamaru just muttered troublesome, which earned a glare from Temari, but she ignored it. So why are you guys here anyway? She asked. Like we told the guard, we have a letter to deliver to Gaara. It's a summoning of the 5 Kages. Shikamaru said. Temari nodded, not very surprised. She had heard about the mysterious army that took over Takigakure, and the country was in, and the recent invasion of the Land of Bears. She figured that one of the Kages would call a summoning sooner or later, given the situation. I guess something happened in Konoha? She asked. Shikamaru nodded. Yeah, that's why we're here. A few minutes later at the Kazekage's office, Gaara was reading the letter from Tsunade, and immediately turned towards Shikamaru and his team. Thank you for this piece of news. You may rest here for the night, and then head back to Konoha and inform Tsunade I shall answer the summoning, he said. The three bowed and headed out while being led by Matsuri. Back in Konoha, life had changed much since Naruto's unexpected arrival. People were either praying to Kami for forgiveness or protection from the demon child. Others were thinking about leaving the village to head to someplace safer. A few others were suggesting that a ninja be sent to deal with Naruto before he could cause any more harm or stay true to his promise. It suddenly came to them all that they never expected there to be consequences to their actions. That all this time they never stopped to think what would happen if Naruto became stronger and sought out revenge. Back in the Hokage's mansion, Tsunade was readying himself for the journey to the Land of Iron. As the rules implied, she could only bring 2 bodyguards. She wanted to bring Shizen, but she was the only person she could trust to run the village in her stead. So instead she would bring Kakashi and Asuma. They were both competent Jonin and well known throughout the world as great shinobis. Also Kakashi had some say in the matter since it was one of his students that they were dealing with. The only problems were the elders and Danzo, and speak of the devil, here came the 2 old windbags. As they came through the door, Kohara said, Tsunadeheim, if I may suggest, it might be wiser to send a team of Jonin to deal with Naruto before this escalated. It would save the trouble of organizing this summoning. Also it would make it seem like it was our fault. Tsunade frowned. I would, but I'm not a believer of wasting life. Before the elders could retaliate, she continued, you all felt the massive killer intent that Naruto gave off, right? That proves that he has become stronger than any of us can understand. Not to mention the size of his army can't be dealt with just a few simple Jonin. The elders were not convinced. Though you may say that other people disagree with that view. In fact, the people have demanded Naruto's head after his return to Konoha. The council has also demanded that something be done about this threat. Hamaru said, just because the people demand it doesn't mean I approve. Tsunade shouted. I am doing something about the current situation, and we will have a solution. But right now handling it ourselves will solve nothing, not when we don't have the manpower to deal with such a large force. Tsunade said as she grabbed the Hokage hat. Now if you don't mind, I must be going. And with that Tsunade walked out the door, ignoring the glares from the elders. When she walked out the door, she spotted Danzo walking towards her office, his usually facial expression on. Out of all the enemies she had in Konoha, he was the most dangerous of them all, especially with that small army backing him up. But still Tsunade was confident that Danzo wouldn't try anything rash for Konoha's sake. The two just shared a brief nod as Tsunade walked past him. Once she was gone, Danzo turned to look at the elders. I assumed she did not agree with the plan? Kohara shook her head. No, she was insisted that a talk with the other Kages was required to deal with the matter. We must do something before this gets out of hand. Danzo nodded. I agree, which is why I sent a team of my best agents a few days ago. Though I am not certain if they will get the job done, I did attach an information seal to each of them, so in case they would die, any info on Naruto's abilities would be sent to me immediately. Sitting on a rock on the ledge of a cliff looking out the ocean, with bodies of root ninjas surrounding him, was Naruto Uzumaki, uninjured and currently drinking some sake. He had a faraway look on his face, thinking that he should be spending this time to know Hinata better, not here leading his army to their ultimate goal. Naruto-sama Futiki, the Uzumaki swordsman and Naruto's personal bodyguard, walked up to the said man and bowed. We've finished surveying the land of Bear Daimyo's palace, and found a good location to strike first. At your command we can begin. Naruto nodded and gulped down the rest of his sake. Good work, he said as he stood up. While I'm doing that, do you mind finding someone to dispose of these bodies? Futiki bowed. As you command, Naruto-sama. Your Majesty, Futiki said as he and Higaho walked towards Naruto, who stand over the battlefield. The daimyo's army had managed to hold off the whirlpool's attack for more than 3 hours. Apparently some remnants of Hashigakure had managed to make their way to the palace to help fortify its defense. But nonetheless they fell to the invaders, slaughtering them to the last man. Finally it was Naruto who took the daimyo's head. Yes, Futiki? Naruto asked as he gave the daimyo's head to a soldier. His uncle Soza was beside him as well as the swordsman was walking up to them. We have received word from Shigeki was unable to stop one of the teams from Konoha and was severely injured. He will live but will be unable to fight for some time. Also our scouts report that all 5 Kages are heading towards the land of Iron for a meeting. By your command we can send forces to intercept them and kill them, Futiki reported. Naruto nodded, thinking about how to deal with the current situation. Tsunade was no doubt trying to rally the 5 great villages together in order to counteract the threat that the whirlpool posed to the world. He could just send the Mons Voriders and kill the Kages quickly, thus turning the villages to go into inner turmoil. However, he still had things to do, and he needed time to do it. He held up his left hand to his eyes and for a brief moment his chakra changed inside him. When he moved his hand, his eyes were now showing the Rinnegan. No, he said finally. We will let them have their little meeting and wait, and see what happens after that. After all, we still have 4 more months until we fulfill our promise. Then he looked at Soza. I'm heading back to Whirlpool to look over the extra forces we're sending here. I trust you to continue to leading the army? Soza bowed his head. Yes, your majesty, was all he said as Naruto suddenly teleported away from his spot back to Whirlpool country. Soza looked at Futiki and Higaho and said, Higaho, go and spy on the next village. Amigekure, I think it was. Futiki told the troops to help the wounded and then prepare to move in 5 hours. Both Uzumaki members nodded and headed out. Unknown to them, someone was watching from the shadows. Well, this is interesting. White Zetsu said. Yes, it is, we should inform the others. Black Zetsu replied. A few hours later, inside a cave where the only thing illuminating the place was a lantern standing on a small pillar, several images shimmered into existence. They were the Akatsuki. What news? Pain asked Zetsu. They are definitely from the Whirlpool Nation, Zetsu reported. Also they are being led by Naruto Uzumaki, which means that the majority of their elites are from the Uzumaki clan. Silence followed this, taking that in. Since news of Naruto's death 3 years ago was brought to them, they had believed that the Nine Tails had perished and their plans suffered a setback. But with this startling news, they could continue with their plan from before. Very well, we shall proceed with our plan and continue to capture the remaining Jinchuriki and complete our goal, however we may have to improvise in some areas. He turned towards 2 of the members. Deidara, Sasori. Head out and capture the 3 tails while it's still in its location. Kankazu, Haiden, go after the 2 tails while its host is still out of the village. Both men nodded and shimmered away. Soon the rest of them disappeared as well. Once they were gone, Pain and Konan turned to face Madara Uchiha, or Tobi as he was called, sitting on the sidelines watching the whole thing, hiding his face in the shadows. So what do you think? Pain asked. Madara sighed before getting up. Before he stepped out of the shadows, he put his orange mask back on. The loss of 7 tail is a hard one, but we already have the 5 tails and can easily retake the 7 tails when the time comes. The Kages will no doubt likely decide to band together to face this threat. Pain said. Unlike us, whose intentions are clear that we intend to capture all the Biju, the whirlpool has not shown their desire to do so. We may have an opportunity here. Madara nodded. Agreed, but that doesn't mean we can't be prepared for such things as a war. What news on the army? He asked. We've neared nearly 100,000 of Zetsu clones. Pain replied. Once we have enough, we can launch them to any parts of the globe from their location. And do not forget that Amigekure also stands with us. Madara nodded. Good. Soon we'll be able to complete our plans and bring true peace to the world. I don't know what Naruto is planning, but it will fail. Konoha. At the northern gate of Konoha, Tsunade, Kakashi and Asum were preparing to go. The rest of the rookies and Team Guy were seeing them off, as well as most of Konoha. Several people were cheering on Tsunade, wishing the Sannin luck in the summit. Kakashi and Asum had on brown robes for protection against the cold in the land of iron, which was a country that was covered by snow. Be safe, Tsunade-sama, Shizen said to her. Tsunade nodded and then said, I'm counting on you to run Konoha until I get back, Shizen. Hi, Hokage-sama. Shizen replied. Kurenai looked at Asuma, and he looked back at her. Make sure to take care of my king, Kurenai-chan. Asuma said. Kurenai smirked before gently patting her stomach, before looking back at Asuma. Just make sure to come back alive, she said. Asuma smiled and nodded. Right, Kakashi, Asuma, Tsunade said as she turned around, pausing for a few seconds, her thoughts going back to Naruto and Hinata, wondering where they were. Let's head out. Hi, Hokage-sama. Kakashi and Asuma said at the same time, and the 3 began walking out of Konoha. Unknown to them, Senritsu Uzumaki watched the whole thing from afar before disappearing in a flurry of crow feathers. Kumogakure. In the mountain-top village of Kumogakure, the village hidden in the clouds, the Yondaime Reikage, had finished getting ready for the summit. He selected his 2 bodyguards, Sure as a censor, Kumo's top medical ninja, and Genjutsu specialist, and Darui, his ninjutsu specialist swordsman who was a master of the Keki Genkai, storm release, with him. Sure had medium-length blonde hair, which covered his blue eyes as well as white skin, and was wearing Kumo's standard Jonin uniform of a 1-strap, gray-colored chunin vest as well as gray pants. Darui had black skin like most of the people in Kumo, and had short, spiky white hair and a large sword on his back that lacked a point, and was also dressed like Sure. The Reikage himself was a tall, imposing man who was extremely muscular, and he had his Reikage robe open to expose his muscular chest, and around his wrists were thick, metal gauntlets that looked like they weighed a ton each, and around his waist was the ogre belt, and he was wearing dark black pants. Darui, Sure, ready to go? A asked, crouching down near the window. Hi, Reikage-sama, both said, wincing as they saw what the Reikage was about to do. Then let's go. I yelled, and with that he jumped out the window of the Reikage tower, falling several hundred meters before landing on his feet before dashing towards the southern entrance. Darui and Sure sighed, and they walked out the door after telling A's secretary to get someone in to fix the window in the Reikage's office. This was going to be a long journey. Kirigakure. On the mist-covered Isle of Water Country, in Kirigakure, the village hidden in the mists, Terumi Mei, the extremely attractive, brown-haired Godame Mizukage was preparing to leave with her 2 bodyguards, the young 7 swordsmen Chojuro and Ao, the leader of the Undertakers. Kiri's elite hunter ninja unit were preparing to go while standing on the docks. A group of villagers were seeing them off. Mei was wearing a blue, low-cut kimono that showed off her impressive cleavage and legs with ninja mesh under it, and she was carrying her robes in the pack on her back. Chojuro was wearing his glasses, a white long-sleeved shirt with vertical black stripes, and cargo pants that were blue and black. Around his chest was where his headband was, connected to the harness that carried the Hiramiki, his 2-handled sword in its unreleased form. Ao's white hair was standing up in a point, and he was wearing strange-looking earrings that had tags over them, and his right eye was covered in an eye patch. He was wearing the same white-sleeved shirt that Chojuro was wearing, but had a blue kimono over his body, and around his forehead was his headband. Sir, I swear on my name as Mizukage I will fulfill my duty, Mei said as she took her Mizukage hat from the elder as he handed it to her. Ho ho ho, as one of the great 7 swordsmen, you must protect Mizukage-sama. I think I'll be fine, probably, Chojuro said, stammering. Have faith in yourself, you're strong, Mei told Chojuro gently, making him blush. That's why you were chosen to guard me, okay, Chojuro? Yeah, I'll try my best. I hope, Chojuro said, blushing and smiling. She's so kind. All you need to say is yes, ma'am. No one wants to hear your waffling. You kids today, just be a man, Ao said in disgust as darkness descended over May's eyes. A man. Ao, enough with the lecture. You need to hurry or else you'll be late for the meeting. Need a man? May thought. I'm just giving the kid advice. When I was his age. Shut up or I'll kill you, May said sweetly after turning to Ao, baffling him. Huh? Ao thought as his jaw dropped. May held up her hat. Come on, Ao, Chojuro, let's go. I'll protect her beautiful smile if I can, Chojuro thought eagerly as they got onto the boat and departed. Iwabikure. In Iwabikure, the village hidden in the rocks, which was nestled in a valley surrounded by large mountains, Inoki of the two scales was getting ready to go with his bodyguards. He was the Sandaime Tsuchikage, a contemporary of Sarutobi Hiruzen, and the oldest living Kage in the 5 countries. He was also the shortest. He had long white hair, a large nose with bumps on it, and a white pointy mustache and pointy beard. He was also wearing the Tsuchikage robes, with the hat hanging around his neck. His 2 bodyguards were Kuratsuchi, a pretty black-haired kunoichi who wore her hair in a bun, and was 2-strapped gray chunin vest, black t-shirt and black pants, and was carrying a big box on her back. The other was Akatsuki, a tall, fat shinobi wearing the same outfit, with a big nose and a perpetual smile on his chubby face. You can do it, Tsuchikage-sama. Kuratsuchi, Akatsuki, you better protect him, you hear? A bunch of shinobi said on a bridge that was over the eastern gate. At my age, this meeting will be a pain, Inoki said, putting his hand onto his back and groaning. You youngsters don't understand what it's like when your hips are a virtual time bomb. How about it, Gramps, thinking of retiring? Kuratsuchi teased as the Tsuchikage put his hand onto the box. You can't rely on your former glory forever. Ah, I'll take your luggage for you, Tsuchikage-sama, Akatsuki said, and he began to lift up the box. Don't touch, Akatsuki. Inoki ordered, and he slipped his arms into his luggage's harnesses. I don't need your help. He then lifted and there was a crack and his hips gave out. Oh. My hips, what do you say? Should you send someone else in your place? Kuratsuchi joked. Don't be ridiculous. Who do you think I am? Inoki demanded, his eyes bugging out from the pain. I am the Sandaime Tsuchikage, the great and fearsome leader of Iwabikure. Woof, I'll carry my own luggage. Good grief, what a stubborn old man, Kuratsuchi groaned, closing her eyes and rubbing the bridge of her nose. All right, I'll carry your luggage then. Let's go, Akatsuki said, lifting Inoki and his luggage up with ease, and putting them on his shoulder. With that, the 3 departed down the road towards the land of iron. Sunagakure. In Sunagakure, the village hidden in the sand, Gaara, the Godain Kazakage was preparing to leave with his siblings who he had chosen to be his bodyguards. He was wearing his Kazakage robes and his hat was hanging loosely around his neck, hitting the giant gourd he was wearing on his back that was carrying his sand. Despite losing the Shikaku, Gaara was as strong as ever. Hell, he was arguably stronger. He still had his automatic sand shield, but he had been training for the past few months in taijutsu, so he wouldn't rely on it anymore, and he had added dozens of futon jutsus to his arsenal. And another reason why he was stronger, he could finally sleep without worrying about the Shikaku taking control. Kankuro stood next to him, his face paint changed, one purple line over his eyes, one over his mouth and one going up his chin to connect with the one on his mouth, and he was still wearing his black outfit. Temari had a white cloak on and on her back was a large scroll, and she was wearing white shinobi armor under her cloak, which had no sides. You were late, Kankuro, Baki chided his student as he stood with Ebizo and the rest of the villagers. It took me a while to figure out this new trick, Kankuro said with a grin. Be careful, Kazakage-sama, Matsuri, Gaara's student as well as girlfriend, said with a smile. Kankuro, take good care of him, Ebizo said with a smile. We will, Temari said with a smile, waving a new small fan over her face to keep herself cool. All right, let's go, Gaara told his siblings, turning to leave. Not like Gaara needs bodyguards, Kankuro said with a grin, giving a thumb up to the villagers. The 3 began walking off, and the sand began to move under their feet, and then the 3 stood still. Gaara then levitated the sand under their feet, and they began to depart at a high amount of speed towards the land of iron in the northeast. Back in the Whirlpool Daimyo's palace, Hinata was currently taking a shower. Her clothes were taken to be washed, and a kimono had been placed on the rack for her to wear. It was a simple design really, a red line over a blue silk with the symbol of the Uzumaki clan scattered across it. But right now Hinata was focused on the soothing water that went down her skin. It felt so good to her, the water getting rid of any dirt or extra skin fat on her body. It also helped with her mentally, as if the water was washing all the worries in the past away. Suddenly the door knocked, and through the curtains, Hinata could make out a female figure, meaning it had to be one of the maids. Hinata-sama, Naruto-sama has returned and is waiting for you in his room, she said. Hinata replied, thank you. Tell him I'll be there in a few. A few minutes later Hinata, in her kimono, walked into the room before gasping as a pair of strong hands surrounded her. She looked up just in time to see a yellow blur lean into her and press his lips against hers. Hinata soon relaxed in Naruto's grip and gave in to the kiss, which she returned passionately. Hinata had never felt such bliss before. At last, after praying, dreaming for this day to come, it was finally happening. She was with her true love at long last. A few minutes later the need for air was required and the two parted, but Naruto brought Hinata to him a little until their foreheads were touching and their noses were almost in contact with each other. For a split second at that moment Hinata almost saw the old Naruto, with that goofy grin of his on his face. Then he said, "I've got some time before I have to head back." The door to the room remained shut for the rest of the day. Inside Naruto's room of the palace, the said man and his lover, Hinata Hyuga, slept peacefully under the blanket that covered their naked forms. Last night had been, well, it was hard to describe last night. So in the best way to describe it was that it was wonderful. As they slept both of them still remembered how their raw flesh molded together in such smoothness. It could only be explained how much they truly loved each other, and their trust of one another too. The moment was ruined however when a knock on the door could be heard. Naruto was the first one to wake up while glaring at the door as if he wished it would just be silent. He looked back at Hinata, noticing how she was still asleep and how peaceful she looked right now. He took in her image for a few more seconds before getting out of bed. After putting on a robe he walked to the door and opened it, to be greeted with the sight of a servant with a letter in his hand. "Forgive me Naruto-sama, but this scroll came from Senritsu-san. It has an A-class seal on it too, so the importance of it was great." Naruto nodded before taking the letter. Once the servant was gone Naruto closed the door and looked at the scroll with the seal still on it. After releasing the seal Naruto opened the scroll and read its contents. His eyes widened for a brief moment before narrowing, a smile forming on his lips. This was important news indeed. "And Naruto-kun?" a small voice asked. Naruto looked up and saw Hinata lying on the bed. She had a tired look on her face as she was rubbing one of her eyes. Her other hand held onto the blanket as to cover her body better. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Naruto gave a soft smile at her. The same kind of smile that made her blush all the time, still did too. "It's nothing for you to worry about, Hinata-chan. Just something I got to take care of. Just stay in the palace and you'll be fine," Naruto said as he prepared to leave. Hinata still had a worried look on her face. "Why, you'll be back soon, right?" she asked. Naruto's smile softened and he walked over to the bed. Leaning forward Naruto cupped Hinata's cheek in his hand and kissed her softly again on the lips. The two enjoyed the short bliss for a moment until Naruto moved back. "I will be. Believe it." Back in the land of iron, Tsunade, Kakashi, and Asuma were arriving in fortress where the summit was being held. A middle-aged man with bandages wrapped around his forehead was greeting them, wearing a formal kimono and 2 swords on his hip. He was the most powerful samurai in the land of iron, the equivalent of a kage, High General Mifune. "Greetings," Mifune started, and he looked at Tsunade. "I am General Mifune. It is an honor to meet you, Tsunade-heim. If you would please follow us to the meeting room." Tsunade nodded and followed Mifune towards the said room, with Asuma, Kakashi and several samurais following behind them. When they entered they already saw the other kages entering through other entrances. There was a silent acknowledgement between Tsunade and Gaara as they took their seats while their bodyguards sat in the seats above. Once Mifune signaled for the kages to place their hats in front of them did the meeting start. "As you all know, we have been called here by the Hokage for an important matter," Mifune said before turning to look at Tsunade. "Tsunade-heim." Tsunade nodded and began to speak. "As you all know, a large unknown force has begun conquering both countries and their villages. As of a few days ago I have, along with the rest of Konoha, have discovered who they really are." When no one said anything she continued, "They are the Whirlpool Nation and are being led by the Uzumaki clan." Mei gasped at the revelation after hearing that the old clan was still alive. Anoki raised an eyebrow while it growled at the news. Gaara however looked shocked beyond belief while the bodyguards were talking amongst themselves. Finally Gaara spoke. "Wait, Tsunade-san, does this mean?" Tsunade nodded solemnly. "I'm afraid so, Gaara. The one leading this new threat is Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, as well as the container of the Kyuubi." There were different reactions to different news. Gaara's was not that Naruto was alive, but what he was doing. A's was because a Biju container was running this invasion. Mei's and Inoki's were due to the fact that Kushina, who was an enemy of Kiri, and Minato, who was an enemy of Iwa, had a child. "Tsunade, are you sure about this?" Gaara asked in an emotional voice, something very rare of him to do. Tsunade nodded sadly and Gaara rested his forehead against his hands. Behind the curtains with the wind symbol, Kankuro and Temari looked at each other worryingly. However, seemed pissed. "How could you have lost control over your Jinchuriki? In fact, this whole dilemma is on your village's head," he roared. Tsunade glared at the wreckage. "I do not deny that my village is somewhat responsible for Naruto's current chosen path. But that does not mean we can't take all the blame, and the reason why I called this meeting was what are we going to do about this?" She waited as the others were now focused on her. After taking over 2 countries already, it is clear that a single village, let alone a single country, can't take on this new threat alone. The only way we can fight back is for us to work together. Gaara looked up. "Seconded," he said simply. Everyone stared at them before Mifune spoke. "I agree with the Hokage and Kazekage. It is clear that this threat is too great for a single village to handle alone. For this I propose an alliance between the 5 shinobi villages, and if you would have it, the Land of Iron wishes to join as well, for this threat endangers our land as well. May also nodded her head. For the safety of our villages, Kirigakure will also join this alliance, she said confidently. Inoki seemed less convinced by this but merely nodded his head as well in agreement. However, was not convinced. I will agree with this alliance, but the question remains, who shall be in command of this new army? Mifune answered to this question. Being a representative of a neutral country, I ask that you respect my position and let me decide on who shall command this new army? When no one objected, he continued. Though I am not sure if they are after the tailed beasts, we should make sure to factor them into this equation. Despite that, those who still have theirs still have faults in your own characteristics as well as your villages. Kirigakure has too many missing means from its village, and thus can't truly be trusted of information being leaked. The Kazekage is young and thus will not have the support of older shinobi from other villages. That Tsuchikage is old and has lost his prime, plus someone of his age would most likely hold old grudges towards the other villages. The only 2 best choices are either the Reikage, whose village has a better military force, or the Hokage, whose village is well known for their bonds of friendship and teamwork. Also, it was the Hokage who brought this matter up while the rest of you remained silent. To this I stood up. The cause of all this originated from Konoha. We can't fully trust them in this matter despite them acknowledging the threat. I'm the best choice out of all 5 of us. Kumogakure has no problems that could give it a reason of not having me put in command of this army. Actually, I could think of 2. A voice said. Everyone turned around and saw Naruto floating in the air above them. As if automatically, all the bodyguards got out from their seats and stood in front of their respective leaders, armed and ready for a fight. However, just as they took their places, the room was soon surrounded by dozens of ninjas, one of them Senritsu. The others all wore light blue armor on top of dark blue sweatshirts. The hoods covered their heads while animal-shaped masks covered their faces. They could only be Yuze and Biyu, but what caught their attention were Naruto's eyes. Instead of normal eyes with blue pupils, their socket was a gray purplish color with black circles, with a black dot in the middle. The Kages, except for Gaara, all knew what it was, but still was unable to believe that it existed. The Rinnegan Inoki murmured. Naruto smirked. Surprise? Shouldn't be, since the Uzumaki clan was founded by the sage of the 6 paths. This made everyone gasp in surprise, but Naruto expected this, and then looked at Suanda. What, don't tell me that it wasn't obvious, Bachan. After all, how else were Senju clan and Uzumaki clan related? Also, if the tailed beast exists, then of course the sage of the 6 paths existed. A pointed finger up at Naruto, a glare on his face as he said, so you are after the Bju. Tsunade raised a hand silencing him from saying anything else on his face. Then she looked up at Naruto with a sad look in her eyes. Naruto, why are you even doing this? What happened to you? Naruto glared at Tsunade. Simple. When my uncle found me and told me what had happened to our clan, how Konoha did nothing to help them, I was furious. After all we did for your village, you abandoned us to extinction. Tsunade shook her head vigorously. No, Naruto, that is not true, but Naruto cut her off with a glare before continuing. It took me 3 years to gain control over my powers as well as rebuild Uzumaki and the Whirlpool Nation. Then I spent some of that time conquering the other countries in the West, increasing my own nation's powers until I had control over the entire Western continents. Now I'm here and I've decided to conquer these lands for the sake of peace. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Peace? Naruto nodded before explaining. You see, the reasons that wars are started is because of several simple things: beliefs, politics, economy, grudges and selfishness. Humans use these to begin wars against one another. No side is just and no side is evil because of their beliefs and lust for power. Rivalries especially cause wars because people can't let go of them. So in honor of my ancestors' desire to unite the world in a single harmony of peace, I shall conquer this world and unite it under one banner, the Whirlpool banner. The others couldn't deny the fact that Naruto had a good point there. In fact, a few didn't really know what to say to that at all. This allowed Naruto to continue. Now back to why Kumogakure would be a bad choice. The reason is because you committed 2 crimes against me. One was trying to kidnap my mother all those years ago for your own selfish needs. And the other was trying to kidnap Hinata Hyuga for the same reasons as well. Everyone glared at the Reikage, who merely said nothing and snarled at Naruto. Tsunade, however, was more shocked at what Naruto said. How did you know about your parents? She asked. Naruto rolled his eyes. My uncle told me everything. After all, he was my mother's older brother. Now then, I suggest. Before Naruto could finish his sentence, it was suddenly right in front of him, his lightning armor surrounding him, and his fist held back. But then Senritsu knocked him back into the ground, causing everyone to prepare for a fight while C and Darui ran to check on their leader. Naruto shook his head and continued. Such temper, Reikage, such temper. You should learn some self-control. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I am willing to offer some of you a chance to surrender. Kumogakure and Iwagakure are out of the question since they were responsible for Uzumaki-Ogakure's original destruction. Kirigakure I have no problems with, and neither do I have with Suna. Konoha I might allow if you agree to some terms of mine, Tsunade-bachan. So what do you say? Naruto asked. The Kages all stared up at Naruto for a few minutes, silence filling the room. Finally Gaara spoke. Naruto, you were the one who freed me from myself. You showed me that a Jinchuriki is not a monster, but a human being with a great responsibility on his hands. That reason was why I became the Kazekage, so that I may use this power to protect those I care about. He closed his eyes for a second before opening them again, a hard look in his eyes. You are no longer the Naruto I know. I don't know who you are now, but you tarnish Naruto's name and beliefs. Even if it kills me, I will not allow you to succeed. I will defeat you and continue towards the path that Naruto set me on, the right one. Naruto stared at Gaara along with the other Kages. Soon Tsunade walked forward and stood by Gaara's side, followed by Inoki, Mei and Mifune. Naruto frowned, disappointed in a way. He had been hoping that Gaara would join, but if he was remaining firm with his decision then he had no choice. Very well, he said as he raised his hand. Suddenly Senritsu disappeared along with the Yuzei and Byu. Consider this the declaration of the Fourth Shinobi World War, the 5 great villages and the land of iron against the Whirlpool Nation, the war of the century. And with that he disappeared in blur of wind, leaving the Kages, their bodyguards and the samurais as the only occupants in the room. Tsunade looked at the others. Now you see why we need this alliance. If Naruto was able to sneak in without any of us even noticing, then who knows what kind of abilities his forces have. Mei nodded. I agree with the Hokage. However, we still need to decide who shall be in charge of this new army. Mifune finally spoke. I believe the Reikage would be a good choice as a commander for this army. Everyone turned to look at him. It is clear that they also plan to capture the tail beasts. Reikage, your brother contains the second most powerful Biju, and your village is more secure than any others. Also I fear that Akatsuki may get involved, and so far none of them are from your village. Are there any questions to this decision? When no one responded, Mifune took that as a way that they accepted the decision. Tsunade however asked, what should do about the tail beasts? Surely the whirlpool will come after them. Everyone looked at since he was now the supreme commander of the new allied force. Aside. My first idea would be to hide them somewhere so they won't be in danger or a burden. No offenses, Kazekage. None taken, Gaara replied. Nodded. However, this is an enemy that we can't beat unless we unleash everything we got. My option is to pair each Jinchuriki with a team of shinobi that they are familiar with. I don't know about the rest of you, but my brother is not someone who will follow orders so easily. However, his students should be able to keep him in line. The question is how many of your villages still have theirs. Mei sighed. I'm afraid my village's Jinchuriki are both gone. My predecessor was the host of the Three Tails, and when he died it went wild and disappeared. The host of the Six Tails went rogue a few years ago, and our hunterines have yet to find him. The last message I received from the captain of the team was that they may have located him, but that was 3 weeks ago. Inoki shook his head. The host of the Four Tails retired long ago, became a hermit, and moved far away from the village. By now he is probably on the other side of the continent. Han, the Five Tails, disappeared weeks ago. We sent search teams but could find no trace of him. What about yours? Tsunade asked. My brother is still within the village per my orders, and Yujito is on a mission. She should be returning in a few days, but I'll send a message for a team to escort her back just in case. I said. The main thing to do right now is ready our forces. Inoki said. We have to recall all our shinobi back to the villages and then regroup at Kumobukure, which should act at the headquarters of the new army. Furthermore, we need to warn the daimyos to ready their armies. I fear that we may need all the help we can get. Everyone else nodded and prepared to head back to their respective villages. Unknown to them, another occupant was watching. This is big, White Setsu said to himself, and Black Setsu. We need to tell Nagato and Madara. Black Setsu said, and soon they disappeared back into the wall. On the borders of the land of Iron, Naruto, Senritsu, and the ANBU were all waiting for Naruto's word to head back to base. Currently the said man had his hand on the ground and his eyes closed, as if feeling for something. Suddenly there was pulse through the ground and Naruto opened his eyes, a smile on his face. Your Majesty? Senritsu asked as Naruto got up. Naruto flexed his hand before looking at his officer. We're done here. Let's head back. And with that they all jumped through the forest back to the Whirlpool Nation. Elsewhere the site of a huge battle could be seen. Sewer pipes were strewn everywhere, along with the remains of walls and ceilings. Water dripped everywhere. There wasn't a single spot that wasn't filled with water. In the center of the carnage there was a man dressed in a blue robe with red clouds on it. He was lying on the ground with an object impaled into his chest. He also had smooth silver hair. Sitting beside him was another man dressed in a similar outfit, except he had tan skin and a mask covering his face. It's been half an hour, the masked man said. Get up. We have more work to do, Haiden. The man on the ground snarled as he stood up, pulling the object out of his chest. Don't give me that crap, Kakazu. I don't like it either, but it's part of my religion, the man said. Kakazu pulled out a map and looked at it. It showed the countries of the shinobi world. The odd part was that many of them had X over them, except for the fire country. We need to head out soon and get the next target. I'm sure Zetsu will be coming to pick up the two tails. Both of them looked up above at the body dangling from a wall. It was a woman, and she looked half dead. Her long blonde hair covered her face, making it hard to see what she looked like. You should hurry to your next target, a familiar voice said. Both Kakazu and Haiden looked to the side and saw Zetsu emerging from the ground. How long have you been there? Haiden asked with a glare. Long enough to get bored of that stupid ritual. White Zetsu said. Haiden rolled his eyes. Will people stop picking on my religion? It gets on my damn nerves. Ignoring his teammates' complaints, Kakazu looked at Zetsu. Something happening? He asked. Zetsu nodded before Black Zetsu spoke. Another world war is going to be happening. And the leader wants us all to report to him at once. Senryaku Uzumaki was reading a book when he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up and saw Naruto walk in, a plain look on his face. Naruto-sama, I guess all went well with your little trip? Senryaku asked. Naruto nodded. Yes, now tell me you have prepared a strategy for the war, Senryaku? Naruto asked. Senryaku walked towards the map showing the world, with markings and arrows everywhere. The plan is simple. Since they've chosen the Reikage as the supreme commander of their army, they will likely use Kumogakure as their main headquarters. We will have to use ships to maneuver our forces east of past the land of Earth, but that will be little trouble with our transportation seals. To divide their forces, they would most likely do it in divisions of 5, each one containing at least 10,000 or so. Then they will send one division, most likely the one with mid-range fighters, to defend the coast of the country. There we shall unleash a small team of the Mons Variders to breach their position and send their troops in disarray. Then we can send in the Alpha Corps in to seize the coast while pushing back any remnants of their forces more inland. Then he pointed to another area of the map. Our forces already there will most likely have to move through the land of frost and land of hot water. This will mean that they will have to evacuate the people there in order to decrease civilian casualties. A surprise attack division will most likely be in the land of hot water to disrupt rank among our army. We can send in our own commando unit towards their location to take them out, and allow our army to go in there without a problem. A division of short to mid-range fighters will probably head through the land of frost but then head towards the land of hot water to support the surprise division. But before they reach there we can send in another group of Variders to disarrange their forces until our army can move in. That leaves 3 other divisions, one a long-range division, another a short-range division, and a special division left to guard the borders of the countries next to the Lightning Country. Unless we send in Mons Variders to deal with the short-range and long-range divisions, then the special division shall be used as reserve forces to assist the other 2 divisions. And all the while our navy shall be transported on the waters between the land of water and the land of lightning, thus striking them from where they least expect an attack. He looked up at Naruto. This will most likely take 2 to 3 days to complete. By then we shall have conquered other smaller countries to increase our army and send in to overwhelm them fully. Naruto nodded but then asked, what of Akatsuki and Odogakure? I doubt their leaders will stay silent for long, Senryaku. Of course, your majesty. But since we don't have enough information on them, I can only assume that they plan on joining forces since Orochimaru can use Edo Tensei. However, it shall depend on how many ninjas he summons and what their abilities are that will decide how they fare in the war against the allied forces and us. Still, once we get a better understanding of their forces, I should be able to put them into the equation of our strategy. Their forces are sure to be equivalent to whatever the allied shinobi forces throw at us. We should also contact Soza-san and let him know to call off the attack on Amigakure so our land forces won't be tired and ready for a fight. Naruto nodded his head in agreement. Very well, I shall inform Soza of this. Then he smiled at Senryaku. You have done well, Senryaku, the strategist bowed. You honor me, Naruto-sama. Also, I received reports that Akatsuki have captured both the 3 tails and the 2 tails, but Yoko has spotted the 4 tails and is making his way towards him as we speak. Good, the faster we get the tail beasts back in their rightful place the better. Now if you don't mind, Naruto said as he walked out of the room. My Heim is waiting for me. Deep within the Fire Country, in one of its many forests, there was a small hut made out of rock. It was big enough to accommodate 2 to 3 people and had leaves inside it to make it a comfortable bed. Outside of it was a man preparing a fire. He appeared to be in perhaps his 40s due to that there was no sign of gray in his red hair. He had a headband on his forehead with the symbol of Iwagakure. The man also wore a purple-red jacket along with brown pants. His name was Rashi, and he was the Jinchuriki of the 4 tails. Currently Rashi was cooking some food over the fire, which consisted of rabbit meat, when he heard a noise from behind in some bushes. Moving as fast as a ninja could, Rashi pulled out a kunai and prepared for battle. Instead, what came out of the bushes was a fox, looking for food. Rashi sighed, but suddenly the fox ran back into the bush, clearly seeing something that scared it. Rashi turned around and barely had time to get out of the way when a scythe impaled the spot where he once sat. Rashi formed a few hand signs. Doton, Earth Masher Jutsu. Suddenly 2 slabs of earth with spikes on them popped up between Yoko, preparing to crush him. But Yoko used lightning speed and dodged the attack and landed a few feet away from Rashi. Most impressive, though I am sure that you can do more than that, Rashi-kun. Rashi raised an eyebrow but nevertheless got into a stance. You know my name, but I don't know yours, Yoko smirked. Of course, my apologies. I am Yoko Uzumaki and His Majesty has sent me to get you. Rashi raised an eyebrow. You mean kill? The Uzumaki shrugged. Well, that was a second option. The first was to convince you to come with us. But I could tell you were not someone who would betray your village. Rashi formed some hand signs. Damn straight. And then he charged. A few hours later the entire field, the entire forest was destroyed. The trees were burnt down with fire covering most of the area. Giant footprints were everywhere and most of the ground was covered in dried-up lava. In the center of the carnage was the motionless body of Rashi, with Yoko standing over him. In Yoko's hands was a scroll with chakra chains coming out and wrapping around the four tails chakra and soul. Now that Son Goku-kun is with us, His Majesty's vision shall soon come to fruition. Deep within Odogakure, Orochimaru was busy working on another experiment, to help with his road to immortality. However, there was one thing he was constantly deprived of, the Sharingan. As long as Sasuke was in Konoha and Itachi was out of reach, he could never require the ocular power. He was so mad that he unintentionally smashed several flasks to the side just to get rid of some anger. When he was done, he was panting heavily from doing it all. Well, it seems like someone's a little upset, a voice said from behind. Orochimaru spun around and on instinct shot several snakes from his arm. They connected with the intruder but went through him. The man was none other than Tobi, or Madara Uchiha. He wore the usual Akatsuki robes with the red clouds on, and an orange mask with one hole to the right covering his face. Orochimaru retracted his snakes and calmed down a little, then he smiled. Well, to what do I owe the honor of being visited by the great Madara Uchiha? He asked. Madara/Tobi narrowed his eyes, though he shouldn't really be surprised since this was Orochimaru. I want to make an alliance between Odogakure and Akatsuki, he replied. Orochimaru cocked his head to the side, still smirking. This wouldn't be due to the large army that has been conquering countries, does it? The Sannin asked. Tobi nodded and continued. They are collecting the Bju. He watched as Orochimaru raised an eyebrow, and have just declared war against the 5 great nations, thus sparking the 4th Great Shinobi War. Akatsuki would like to take part in it. Orochimaru chuckled. So you are planning on making this a 3-way war, right? Anything that threatens our plans must be dealt with quickly and ruthlessly, Tobi said. Despite this, our current forces simply aren't enough, which is why I've come to you, a man who can give us few but good numbers. Orochimaru knew he was talking about the impure resurrection jutsu. True, Orochimaru had been collecting hundreds of DNA of deceased great ninjas, and that could very well turn the tide of war. Plus his own ninjas from his experiments could also be good for this battle. However, what's in it for me? He asked the masked man sitting across from him. Despite wearing a mask, Orochimaru could have sworn that Tobi was smirking. Did you know that the Uzumaki clan are the ones leading this invading army? Orochimaru's eyes widened at this, clearly not expecting this bit of information. The Uzumaki clan was an old clan, almost as old as the Uchiha clan. They were well known for their fuinjutsu and long lives. Anything from them would be worth just about anything. Are you saying that you can get me some of their scrolls from the private Uzumaki library? Orochimaru asked. Tobi nodded. I remember where the location of Uzushiogakure is and have actually been there recently. Imagine to my surprise that it had been fully rebuilt. If you give me the numbers to fight in this war, allowing me to get the tail beasts, then I shall help you get access to the library. Then he raised his arm. Do we have a deal? Orochimaru thought carefully on this. He knew that this man would never keep his promise, and would most likely backstab him in the end. However, if he could just pry the information out of him of the library, then it might be worth getting involved in this war. And besides, he will be able to collect more bodies for his technique. Deal, he said and shook Tobi's hand. Back in Konoha, the village was in a state of large activity. Shinobi who were being assigned to frontline duties were busy packing only the essentials for the war, saying goodbye to loved ones and giving praise to Kami to return home. Those staying behind were setting up defenses in case the enemy even thought of attacking now. Civilians were cleaning homes and preparing for outsiders from the countries that would become battlegrounds. Meanwhile, the council was having an emergency meeting in the Hokage's mansion along with Jiraiya. Due to the fact that my presence shall be required at Kumogakure and Shizen shall be put in command of the medical division, I shall be leaving Konoha in the care of Koharu and Hamaru. She said the last part with distaste, as if the 2 names were poison in her mouth. Koharu raised an eyebrow but decided not to argue. War made people make decisions that they did not like. But the next part caught her off guard. Also, Danzo Tsunade said as she looked at the said man. I'm placing you under arrest and am disbanding Root as well. Danzo's eyes widened at this. You have no right to such an act, he yelled. Swanda smirked. Actually, I do. We are at a time of war and thus I gain more power in order to keep things under control, as long as my decision benefits the village. And you leading a separate division of ANBU is justification enough to have you arrested, especially with all the atrocities and dealings you had with Orochimaru. Some of the council members gasped at this piece of news. They knew that Danzo would do anything in order to protect Konoha, but to work with a traitor from the village? That was just unacceptable. Danzo calmed down a bit. Though he was kind of nervous that Tsunade found out all of that, he knew that his operatives would free him from imprisonment, that along with the other few tricks up his sleeve, literally. Oh, and I'll have those Sharingans removed from your arm and face too, Tsunade said lastly just as several ANBU members appeared beside Danzo. Danzo's eyes widened. Now this was something he was not expecting. How did you know? He said, showing for the first time some fear. Tsunade smiled and took out a scroll and began to read it. Dear Hokage, I fear my time in this world is short, but I shall deliver this warning to you. Before I die, Danzo managed to steal one of my Sharingans from me due to its unique abilities. I fear that he plans on implanting it into himself, and that he might have even more. I beg you to watch him carefully, as there is not telling what he might be planning, but I do know this, whatever it is, it can only bring ruin to Konoha. Sincerely, Shursui Uchiha. Tsunade finished the last part with a smirk on the look on Danzo's face. I found this hidden in the third's old secret pipe compartment. Also, I had some Hyuga members check your chakra lines. The flux in them was as clear as day. Take him away. And with that, Danzo was carefully but roughly escorted by the A and B units. Tsunade then turned to face the rest of the council. Assigned shinobi shall report to the eastern gate and prepare for immediate departure towards Kumogakure. And Shikaku, the head of the Nara clan, looked up at the Hokage. You will be the chief strategist of the army. I've already gained the approval of the Raikage. Shikaku sighed, troublesome. But I guess I have no choice. Tsunade nodded. Very well, that is all for now. If there is any more information, it shall be delivered to you via shinobi. With that over, the council members got up and left the room, leaving the two Sannin alone. Tsunade sighed and leaned back before looking at Jiraiya. I trust that you will help us as well? She asked. She wasn't really planning on forcing the Toad Sage to fight in this war, since that would mean he would have to face one of his own students. Jiraiya smirked. Don't worry, ever since Naruto did that whole show thing a few weeks ago, I knew I would have to face the kid myself. I'm prepared for what's to come. Then he got serious. The question is, what will that kid do? I mean, we practically know nothing about this, though one never does during times of war. I just hope you're ready to go through with this time. Tsunade took a drink of sake. You bet your damn ass I'm ready, she said confidently. Whoever this ass in Naruto's skin is, he's going to pay for making the Gaki look bad. They both knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to deny the fact that this man was indeed the Naruto that they knew, and that he was doing this on his own free will, nothing else. However, they still denied it in order to ease both their minds and their hearts. Sasuke zipped up his new Konoha jacket and slid in his kusanagi into its sheath as he prepared to leave the compound and head towards Kumogakure along with the rest of Konoha shinobis. He admitted that he would rather be hunting his brother right now, but knew that now was not the time to make rash decisions. Now was the time to think straight. He hadn't been doing that in a long time, but after the 3 years training he had with Kakashi, now was the time to show that he had it. He quickly looked into a mirror and activated his secret weapon, the Mangekyo Sharingan, which he somehow earned when he nearly killed Naruto all those years ago. Soon there was a knock on his door, followed by Sakura's voice. Hey Sasuke, everyone is waiting. You ready? Deactivating his Sharingan, Sasuke picked up his bag. Yeah, I'm ready. And headed towards the door. The two walked in silence as they headed towards the eastern gate, where the rest of the Rookie 12 and the other ninjas of Konoha were waiting. Fortunately, they weren't the only ones moving a little late. More and more shinobi appeared, all of them a little nervous of going to war. A lot of them looked very young to be Chunin, or even Jonin for that matter, but many of them were veterans of countless missions and battles, along with a few of them veterans of wars as well. They would endure this battle even if it were to be their last battle ever. Tsunade soon got everyone's attention as she stood in front of the large gathering of shinobi. If everyone is here, then we are moving out to Kumogakure. And with that she headed out, followed by the rest of the large army of Konohanin. Back inside a cave, a large demonic statue could be seen. Along with it, 2 other forms were there as well, Yujuto, container of the 2 tails, and the 3 tails. Currently Akatsuki was finishing sealing the 2 tails. As they were almost finished, their leader Pain spoke. Zetsu has informed me that a 4th shinobi war is about to begin, he said to the other members. Itachi raised an eyebrow. I assume that there is more to it? He asked. Pain's image nodded. There is. This war involves the remaining Bija. It is the 5 great shinobi villages against the invading force that has been conquering countries these past few weeks. As such, we, Akatsuki, shall be taking part in this war. Deidara laughed. Finally a chance to really demonstrate my art to the world. Still, who would have thought the 5 great villages would be joining together? Whoever they are fighting must be one hell of an enemy. Oh, Haiden said suddenly. I have no problem with going to war, since Jashin-sama requires sacrifices, but how the hell are we going to wage war? We don't exactly have an army, you know. Pain did something that none of the members expected him to do, something that really scared them. He chuckled. Haiden, you are a new member, don't talk about such things. I wouldn't have done all this if we didn't have an army. Pain said as he looked at every single one of them. All of you will act as captains for our army and shall personally gather here in order to go over the plans for the war. Understood? When all the members nodded their heads, they silently continued the sealing process. In the whirlpool country, Hinata and Naruto were looking at the moon from a balcony. Hinata wore a purple robe around her body while Naruto wore nothing more than a long-sleeved black shirt and matched black pants. The shirt also had the Uzumaki symbol on the back of it too. Hinata had her head resting on Naruto's right shoulder, a comforting look on both of their faces. Suddenly Naruto asked, Hinata? The said girl looked up. Do you hate what I am doing? Hinata hesitated for a second, unsure how to answer this. Finally she spoke. I admit that I was shocked that you were going through with this, but after watching how the people in Konoha tarnished your name, celebrated your death, I began to see why you would do this. She rested her hand on his. So no, I don't hate what you are doing. Naruto smiled at her and suddenly leaned in towards her face, causing her to do the same. Soon their lips touched and began to move in sync with one another. It was pure bliss, something neither of them had had in years until a few days ago. But before they could go any further, they heard footsteps coming towards their location. Separating slowly, the couple watched as Senaraku appeared. Your Majesty, my apologies for interrupting yours and Hinata-sama's time together, but we have just received word that ninjas have begun to gather in Kumogakure, and as such you are needed in the command room, he said. Naruto sighed and looked at Hinata. The former heiress nodded her head and headed back to the bedroom. While she was walking in one direction, Naruto followed Senaraku towards the other direction. War had begun, and the world would never be the same again. In Kumogakure, a large commotion was happening in the center of the village just outside the Raikage's mansion. Shinobi of Kumo, Iwa, Kiri, Suna and Konoha, along with samurais of the Land of Iron, were moving around, getting things ready. Those who had brought food were going over the food supplies for each division, making sure nothing was out of place. Those who were part of the sensory division or medical divisions got into small groups with other people of those divisions to meet up with their captains. Those who were part of the 5 larger battle divisions lined up with others and awaited orders. Shizen was made captain of the logistical support and medical division, while Kankuro was made captain of the surprise attack division, whose job was to harass the enemy's forces before the main army engaged them. Ao of Kirigakure was made captain of the sensor division, and finally Inoichi Yamanaka was made captain of the intelligence division. The 5 battle divisions were broken into combat abilities rather than villages. The first division, under the command of Dari of Kumogakure, was the mid-range battle division. Kitsuchi of Iwagakure was put in charge of the second division, a short-range battle division. Kakashi Hatake had been given command of the third division, was the short to mid-range battle division. Gaara was put in charge of the fourth division, the long-range battle division. Gaara was also the supreme regimental commander, while Shikamaru was the proxy commander. Finally, Mifune of the Land of Iron was made commander of the 5th division, the specialist battle division. Mei was given charge of leading a team to protect the daimyos of the various countries that would become a battlefield of the war. She had taken several skilled shinobis who were skilled in guarding, including Chojuro, while 2 of the kages were given roles to perform Tsunade, and Inoki would remain in Kumogakure to oversee the battles that would take place. As the 3 kages looked over the now 5 lined-up divisions, they had a feeling that out of all the wars, this would be the greatest and most deadly of them all. But they were shinobi, they were used to such risks and showed no fear in doing so. Kazage walked alongside Hinata as she listened to the advisor read off some concerns that the people had, though there weren't that many. Since Naruto was preparing for war, Hinata decided to take it upon herself to help with the inner concerns of the nation as well as Yuzushiogakure. Kazage had been assigned as Hinata's personal bodyguard due to the fact he was Voraiter, and was the only one that she was familiar with. He had to admit that he was impressed with Hinata's sudden change in personality. She had gone from a shy, curious girl to a confident and dependable woman. He could see why Naruto had taken such a liking to her. Kazage-kun, she said as she excused the advisor after finishing answering all of the questions. Kazage looked up at her. Yes, Hinata-sama? Is there anything I should know when the war starts? She asked. I want to be prepared and help Naruto-kun out in any possible way, she said the last part with determination in her eyes. Kazage smiled. I believe that a large, wide barrier shall be placed around the entire country in order to protect it from invaders. Also 2 more barriers shall be placed inside the larger one around the palace and the other around Yuzushiogakure. By then our forces here shall have already moved out towards the Lightning Country to assist our army that is already there. You will most likely be asked to stay within the palace and shall be assigned ANBU guards to protect you in my absence, since the Mons Voriters shall be called to action. Hinata nodded when suddenly her ears caught a voice over the loudspeaker. Attention! Attention all Mons Voriters! An order from His Majesty Naruto-sama to all Mons Voriters. Enemy forces of all 5 great shinobi villages along with samurais of the Land of Iron have been detected and located near the Lightning Country. All Voriters are to prepare immediately and gather at the Gate of Enlightenment for immediate launch. The Whirlpool country is going to attack the allied shinobi force and wipe them out. Kazage looked up at the loudspeaker and then back at Hinata before bowing. My apologies, Hinata-sama, but I must answer the call. Please remain in the palace as I have said, and with that he left. On the western coast of the Land of Lighting, the 1st Division waited anxiously for the enemy to arrive. However, no sign of enemy forces could be seen on either the sea or the land. Some of the ninjas began to think that the Whirlpool chickened out, while some others began to get nervous. Dari, the commander of the 1st Division, was thinking hard. No way the Whirlpool retreated. What's going on? From her spot, Tenten spotted something in the sky. Up there! She gasped. Everyone who heard her looked up and gasped. Falling from the sky were 10 blue balls of flame heading straight towards them. The ninjas cried in shock as the balls of fire struck their positions, causing them to scatter. One headed towards Dari, but he managed to jump out of the way and landed in the water where another one had already landed. but instead of drowning it stood up out of water. With the other divisions it was the same thing. 10 balls of fire would strike each division, landing in various places. All of them were blue. After everything settled down did the ninjas approach the blue fires slowly, weapons drawn. What the hell is this? Samui asked as she stared at the blue fire before them. So far reports were coming in that 10 balls of blue fire had struck near each division, but no signs of enemies could be seen and they were doing no harm to the ninjas of the alliance either. Darui however was not convinced. Hayashi-san. Use your Byakugan and tell me if you see anything. Hayashi nodded and activated his Kekkai Genkai. Byakugan. And soon the veins near his eyes appeared as he stared at the blue flames. Then he suddenly gasped. Impossible. These blue flames are dense chakra. Everyone gasped at this news. Dense chakra? Is that even possible? Tenten asked. Wait. Hayashi said shocked. I can see a person inside it. And his chakra is off the scale, almost Kage level. Atsui, Samui's hot-headed brother, smirked as he pulled out his katana. Who cares what level they are? Let's get hot and kick their ass, he cried and charged along with several others. Atsu, damn it. Cool it. We need to think this properly. Samui cried to her brother. He's too hot-headed for his own good. Darui thought. But just before he could call out to the blonde-hair ninja something shot out of the fire towards Atsu. Before he could react it blew off his right arm and half of his right side. Atsu blinked for a few seconds before falling down into the water. Atsu. Samui cried and dove underneath to grab her brother's body. As she did a man walked out of the blue fire. He wore a black and white jacket and a gray cape. Attached to his side was a katana. He had wisps of blue hair. It was Oigon-men, one of the Mon's Varider. Sorry, he said to the shinobi as he walked out of the flames, but the order was to kill all of you. Elsewhere the attackers were slaughtering the shinobi of the 1st Division. Darui cursed as he looked at the situation. He could see another one of the attackers slaughtering ninjas. He was about average height, wore glasses and had a beard and mustache, and his name was Heihachi Shomen. Another was a woman named Tsutiki Uzumaki, and she looked young, like in her mid-teens. She wore a black military cap on her head, but you could still see her red hair. Another man wore a gas mask and was bald. His name was Sokuman Kamigata. When someone seemed to get near him collapsed on the ground in pain. Nawatari Yakotawaru was a man with a brown mohawk and tan skin. His katana was cutting down anyone who got in his way, and the look on their faces seemed to be one of shock then pain. Then there was a man who created cages out of thin air. He had long red hair that covered his eyes. His name was Oki Kibendo. The biggest one, Tamashi Mizukashi, had scars all over his face and black hair. He was completely thrashing anyone that got in his way. Another seemed to be killing off shinobi by going through them. He was Byoki Karatetriki, and he had long gray hair and pale skin. The 9th one seemed to be repelling any attack that came at him. He had flat red hair and earrings and his name was Saiban Hanaru. The last one was Rohi Kimona and he had a scar across his lip and his hood over his head, but you could still see red hair. The 2nd Division was faring no better than the 1st. The same number of attackers was assaulting the 2nd Division as well and causing horrendous losses. One of them was Atsume Shinku. He had long red hair and a scar going down his cheek. Then there was Teguro Jikyoku who had short, smooth red hair. After that was Kichigai Janpa, he had white dreads that went down to his neck. Next was Wahii Warito who had green spiky hair and piercings across his left eyebrow. Aber Kenjiro was next, and he had short brown hair. The only female among them was Keiga Ketiai. She had long blonde hair tied into a ponytail. The tallest one was Mashigato Kaba and he had orange hair tied into a short ponytail. Hakai Todoroki was the only one wearing a mask, a wrestler mask, and all you could see was his blonde mustache. The creepy one was Zanen Nato. He had crooked teeth, pointy black hair and a visor that covered his eyes. Finally there was Anti-Eye Uzumaki and he had short smooth red hair and a small beard. The same could be said for the 3rd Division, Kakashi's division. 10 Muzanines in uniforms began to slaughter any shinobi that got too close to them. Their names were Hyusu, Yum, Kodomo, Muro, Shiro, Shinri, Chiki, Jinisei, Kokoro and Refuto. Hyusuriara had short brown hair and glasses. Also whoever got near him became deformed and died quickly. Yung Jusui had long black hair, a mask covering his mouth and had a skinny body. Surrounding him were thorns that whenever they pierced someone, they would die screaming. Kodomo Inat wore a mask that looked like the devil, so you really couldn't see his face except for his black hair. Muro Doyo had a furious look on his face, which went well with his bald head and the scars going down both of his eyes. Shiro Nozomu had a comforted look on his face as he killed ninjas. He had long brown hair and a hat on his head. Shinri Kopi, the only female, moved very quickly throughout the battle. She had short blonde hair with a dye of pink in it. Chiki Ohina had short red hair and a beard and seemed to allow his opponents to attack him. Jinsei Kawagara had wild red hair, and while he attacked, his enemies died with horrified looks on their faces. Anyone who fought Kokoro Yuitsu, who had white hair and a look that showed he did not get much sleep, seemed to give up and died quickly. Refuto Uzumaki was killing his enemies without touching them. He had short red hair and glasses. The 4th Division was also suffering losses as well. Iki Haretsu, a man with a buzz-cut head underneath a black bandana, was killing people with his explosions. Maruto Dorian had swirly red hair and beard. He seemed to easily kill his enemies without much effort. Ashi Takara had a wicked look on his face that went well with his spiky black hair. A large bald-headed man with a mustache was blasting people away with his fists. His name was Byaru Uzumaki. Another named Karai Sanso had dreadlock black hair tied into a ponytail, and he seemed to be able to suffocate his enemies without much effort. Sakushi Omotai was the only girl among them. She had long brown hair and a piercing on her nose. Next was Bijin Debutsu, and he had short red hair and wore a hapuri. Hiko Fuku, who had shaved eyebrows and blue hair, seemed to destroy any attack coming to him. Mokuhaya Ikari was next. He had black and purple hair and wore an eye patch over his right eye. He seemed to attack the shinobi with great anger. The last was Kisho Hanabira, who was engaged with Gaara, and fighting him with flower petals. He had silver hair tied into a ponytail. General Mifune led the 5th Division, and they were also taking losses too. One of the attackers was Yaki Yasuto, seemed to have a body made of rubber. He had short horns on his head, which was bald. Then there was Mawashi Furuzubi, he had a bald head and blue war paint on his face too. Next came Teruo Kusaru, whose entire face was covered in bandages and his body was well muscled. Shiho Ashite was the only girl and she had short brown hair, and whoever attacked her suddenly had pained looks on their faces. Yuzai Mijikina seemed to be slaughtering the shinobi with ease. He had smooth black hair. Next was Makuhai Jishiki, and he fought like a lunatic. His body was covered in scars and he had red spiky hair. Fusho Adaru, who had short white hair, seemed to be unaffected by any kind of attack. In fact, he seemed to enjoy it. One of the odd ones was Atsuranjuru. He had wild red hair and wore glasses. He used words to kill his enemies. Nakutai Bakufu, who had black hair and a beard, fired beams from his fingertips. And finally was Keizo Tsuka. He had red hair tied into a short ponytail. Back with the Sappai's attack division, they too faced one of the Voriders. As Kazuji Uzumaki walked towards Kenkuro's team, an emotionless look in his eye, he said, "Cower in fear, shinobi." And then an orb appeared in his right hand. "The Mon's Voriders have come to purge you." Kenkuro smirked as he readied his scorpion puppet. "Just because you showed up in a flashy way doesn't mean you can take us down so easily." Kazuji cocked his head. "If that is true, then why are your legs shaking?" Kenkuro's eyes widened and looked down, and sure enough his legs were shaking slowly. Was he really afraid of this guy? Sure, he was giving off a massive killer intent and a large amount of chakra was surrounding him. But that didn't mean Kenkuro was afraid, did it? "Quit trying to use psychology on me, punk. I'm not that gullible." Kazuji sighed. "Very well, let us be done with this." Then he looked up. "Do you have any suggestions of what I should do with them, Your Majesty?" he asked. Everyone looked up aghast. Floating in the air was none other than Naruto Uzumaki. Along with his usual attire, he had a black cape covering him as well. He had an amused look on his face as he stared at the group of shinobi facing one of his subordinates. Despite not being scary, Kenkuro felt a little bit nervous under that gaze of his. Finally he said, "It matters not to me what you do. Just complete your assignment. I shall return shortly." And when he left, Kenkuro felt something go through him. He looked to his left, and saw that his shoulder had been slashed, so deeply that his arm might come off at any second. He only had a single time to gasp before he fell to the ground and the darkness took over. "Captain?" Omoi cried in horror before Kazuji leapt at them. "Get back! Get back! What the hell are they? Oh my God!" He ripped him in two. "Help whoever you can. Hurry, someone help me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. What are you ARGGH? Run! 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 We need backup. Find the commander. Hurry! Regroup! Regroup! Someone help us! No, please don't. I can't see him. Where did he go? This is insane." Every scream was like a dagger digging deep through Tsunade's chest. She covered her face with her hand, unable to believe this was happening. A and Inoki just had shocked looks on their faces as the reports kept coming in. So far the 1st Division had lost 231 soldiers, 2nd Division lost 196, 3rd Division had lost 215, 4th Division lost 308, and 5th Division lost 173. No word had come from the Surprise Attack Division, and the Medical Division was scattering all over the lands to help as many as they could. And as for the enemy's losses, they had none. Slammed his fist on the table. "Damn it! How could this have happened?" Inoki shook his head. "Apparently we underestimated the enemy's powers. They don't need their army to fight us. These people that they sent seem to be doing a good job of wiping out our people." Then he looked at Tsunade. "Tsunadeheim, do you know if Naruto has some kind of jutsu that can give people this kind of power?" he asked. Tsunade shook her head. "No, to be honest, I don't know what he is capable of doing. For all I know, he might have more in store than just this." She looked at A. "You're the general of this force, what should we do?" A grunted but thought at the situation at hand. Then he said, "All of our forces are currently occupied at the moment. Shikaka-san, any suggestions?" Shikaku Nara, chief strategist, stared at the map for a long time. Then his eyes widened, an idea forming in his head. We'll have to scatter our forces in platoons, try and separate the attackers so they can't aid one another. Then we'll have our forces attack carefully so we can figure out their powers. So far we know that the Uzumaki clan utilize sealing jutsu, so they must have done some kind of seals on these people to make them so strong. You think releasing the seals might decrease their powers? Tsunade asked. Shikaku sighed. It's all theories right now, but that's the best I got. We'll have to mix up forces of different companies in order to better counteract the enemy, and confuse their forces as well. Also, I have a feeling that there is more to come after this. What do you mean? A asked. Shikaku scratched his head. Their message, the order was to kill you all, doesn't really convince me that they were entirely ordered to kill us. More likely it was to lower our forces' morale and force them to scatter, which is all we can do right now since sheer numbers can't seem to stop them. Then why are we even doing it? Wouldn't it be wiser to have all our forces regroup on the 4th and 5th divisions so we can take them all out together? Anoki asked. Shikaku shook his head. No, I think that is what the enemy wants as well. Remember, our enemy is the Uzumaki clan, masters of Fujitsu. They may find a way of trapping our forces and slaughter them. We have no choice but to divide them into platoons, and then reform them back into divisions. All I know is that whoever is Naruto's strategist is a genius to have come up with such a plan. But right now this is all I can do. Everyone looked at A. The decision was entirely up to him right now. The Raikage sighed and nodded his head. Shikaku turned towards Inochi. Get ready to transmit new orders. Soon all 5 divisions received word to split up into platoons to separate the enemy from each other. The plan seemed to work. Each of the attackers would follow 1 or 2 platoons, separating themselves from their comrades. But with the 3rd division, Kakashi was already engaged with an enemy, fighting solo. Kakashi ducked as another flying thorn came at him. The man he was facing was Yum, and he saw how his opponents died. Whenever a shinobi was impaled by one of those thorns, they would die instantly, screaming. Kakashi admitted he got scratched once by one of those thorns, but he was still alive. The only odd part was that his body kept shaking when it struck him. Poison perhaps? Got to put some distance in us before, Kakashi said to himself as he jumped into the air. As he did, he formed some hand signs. Raiton, lightning beast running jutsu, and soon a hound made out of lightning appeared from his hand and charged straight towards Yum. Yum, however, seemed unfazed by this and instead raised his hand, bloodstall, futon style, and with a wave of his hand he smacked the lightning hound to the side with ease. Kakashi widened his eyes in shock at this. He did something to his body. The Jonin thought as he saw a faint glowing blue on the man's arm. Then Yum launched 2 more thorns at Kakashi. Kakashi managed to dodge them all, yet one managed to scratch him, sending another shaking feeling go through his body. It has to be poison that he is using. There is no other explanation, Kakashi thought. Are you confused? Yum asked as he stared at Kakashi before continuing. You must be thinking that it is poison that is the cause of it, correct? Kakashi said nothing, just glared at Yum as the man kept talking. Well, you're wrong, he said. The sensation going through your body is much more than poison. That is Sokumen's expertise. What you are feeling is something that all humans have. It is something that we try to suppress and hide within ourselves and deny its existence. That something is fear. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Fear? He asked. Yum nodded. You see, His Majesty gave us special seals on each Voriters, to establish our loyalty to him. These seals give us special abilities that are unique only to us. Mine is to spread fear through my thorns, created by my Versteckdegen, hidden sword, nature chakra made solid into actual weapons. I can use it to kill my opponents. In fact, the simplest scratch by my thorns is enough to drive a man mad in fear, to the point of instant death. You, however, are showing a large amount of resistance to it, though that is no surprise since you were Naruto-sama's sensei. Yum raised his hands. However, let us see how well you are at dodging all 10 of them. Then he launched all said thorns at Kakashi, moving at fast speed. It took all of Kakashi's skills to dodge every single one of those thorns. Now knowing what they were capable of, Kakashi made even more effort to dodge them. If a single one were to impale him, then it might be instant death for him. More importantly, I need to inform command about their abilities, he thought. When the last one passed him, Kakashi allowed himself to momentarily relax, but realized that the thorns were heading back towards him. Kakashi formed several hand signs and created dozens of clones to confuse the thorns as all 12 of them charged Yum. In just a few minutes, however, the thorns had managed to wipe out half of the clones. Kakashi tried a different plan. 4 of them scattered to surround Yum while 2 of them charged directly at him. All 4 were taken out except for the last 2. Yum raised his hand and chakra began to form into it. His blood stall again? Kakashi thought as he tried to punch Yum. The man dodged it and thrust his hand forward, but the real Kakashi managed to jump out of the way while the last clone continued charging. Yum used his hand to create a blade of chakra and slashed the clone's chest. However, instead of disappearing into a puff of smoke, he began to turn into lightning and exploded and engulfed Yum as it exploded in an electrical shock. Kakashi let a sigh of relief, believing it to be over. Most impressive, Yum said from behind Kakashi. The Konoha nin's eyes widened and barely jumped back just in time to dodge a thorn. Once Kakashi was able to get a good look at Yum and was shocked to see that he was perfectly fine, except that his right hand had burn marks on it. How did you? Kakashi asked, but Yum beat him to it. We call it Gai Shrit, spirit walk. I would explain, but since I'm going to kill you it does not matter, he said as the thorns appeared again. Now shall we try this again? Kakashi knew that he couldn't keep this up forever and his chakra was very low after those last two jutsus. I need to fall back and rethink my strategy, Kakashi thought to himself. Moving quickly he threw a smoke bomb at Yum, and once it exploded Kakashi began heading in the opposite direction. Once he made into the forest he went onto his radio and tried to contact anyone else nearby. Hello, this is Kakashi Hatake, Captain of 3rd Division, is anyone receiving me? A few seconds later he received a static reply came through, with a familiar voice to boot. Yash, Kakashi, this is Guy. I am with Sakura and Lee. What happened? Kakashi sighed, glad to know that he got someone. I just had a little skirmish with one of the attackers. I couldn't defeat him but I managed to learn some of his powers. We need to regroup and find a way to contact HQ. That is going to be hard to do if you're dead, a voice said. Kakashi turned to his left and saw Yum right beside him. Before he could react one of the thorns struck him in the chest and sent him crashing into the ground. At that exact moment Kakashi began to see things in his mind. Terrible things such as people being slaughtered by Yum, screaming and begging for help. It was so intense that it terrified him, making him almost want to scream in fear. Instead he collapsed on the ground panting heavily. Yum casually walked over towards Kakashi since the Jonin could barely move. Yum raised his right hand and it began to harden with chakra surrounding it. And this is the end. Leaf whirlwind! Guy shouted as he swung a kick at Yum. The Varitor barely had enough time to raise his arm and change chakra signatures to deflect the attack. Yum jumped backwards so he had a good space from Guy, who was now joined by Sakura and Lee. Sakura ran over to Kakashi to check his wounds. Kakashi-sensei, are you okay? She asked as she helped him into a better position for her to heal him. Guy took a moment to look at Kakashi. He saw no serious wounds, except for the one made by the thorn, but the silver hair ninja still looked shaken up. To have done this to Kakashi, Guy thought, this man must be very skilled. Kakashi, were you able to figure out what kind of abilities he has? Guy asked as he got into a fighting stance. Kakashi nodded as Sakura healed his only wound. Yeah, but he has too many to explain at once. Just avoid those thorns at all costs, do not try and deflect them. Do they have some kind of poison? Lee asked. Kakashi shook his head. No worse, they inject fear into the target. It causes anyone who is by it to fear this man, he said as Sakura helped him up. Thanks, Sakura. Yum cocked his head when he heard the name. Sakura as in Sakura Haruno? He asked. Sakura raised an eyebrow. You heard of me? She asked. Yum nodded. Yes, Naruto-sama has told us much about you. He smirked underneath his mask. He says you are quite the banshee. A vein was about to pop in her forehead. He said, what about me? She roared. He also says that you used him to retrieve Sasuke. Yum said, which made Sakura shut up. He says that you used his love for you to retrieve the man that you love who was willing to defect all for your personal greed. The pink-haired Kunoichi stared at the man in shock, unable to believe what she heard. That's not true, she said shakily. Yum shrugged. You can deny it if you like, he said as the thorns began to move. But still he has ordered your death. Lee suddenly appeared before him, an angry look on his face. I will not allow you to insult Sakura-san, he cried as he prepared to do an uppercut to the chin, but Yum simply dodged it with ease. Lee tried several more kicks and punches but Yum managed to dodge them all. I admit your speed is impressive, Yum said, but against my open senses, you will be unable to hit me. Guy suddenly came from behind and kicked him hard in the head, or at least he tried, but Yum used blood stall to stop the attack. Then when Guy's leg went down, Yum changed it from to defensive to offensive by slashing his chest. The wound wasn't deep but it was enough for Guy to flinch and had to jump backwards at a safe distance. Sakura then charged Yum and punched him in the chest. Because Yum still had the blood on offense, he felt the hit deal damage to his chest. But when Sakura threw in another punch, Yum was prepared this time and activated his blood to defensive, and managed to stop the attack. Then he switched back to offensive, and prepared to strike Sakura when he heard static above him. Lightning cutter! Kakashi cried as he brought his hand down onto Yum, stabbing him the right shoulder. Yum flinched at the pain and managed to push Kakashi back, as the other three regrouped with Kakashi. Yum looked at his wound and sighed. It seems I underestimated you, Kakashi, he said as he took some blood from his wound and formed a hand sign. I guess this means I must go at full strength. Then when he finished the last sign, the blood turned black and began to spread across his body. Weg Salbais, path of the sage Salbei Bozergeists, sage of the wicked mind. Then it began to take shape around his body. Soon Yum was covered in some sort of armor. His feet wore condor claws shoes and his hands had black skeleton-like gauntlets, while his chest was covered in bone-like armor with a skull in the middle. Skeleton wings were strapped to his back and his thorns surrounded him in a circle. Finally he wore a condor skull as a helm over his head. It was a very impressive and intimidating appearance. What is that? Sakura asked, a little scared by the appearance. Kakashi eyes widened as his Sharingan saw the chakra radiating around him. I don't know, but his chakra is off the roof, tailbeast level almost. He said, we need to get this information to HQ before the others try take on the rest of the enemy, otherwise we're all dead. I doubt that he will let us warn the others so easily. Guy said. Agreed, Guy, if you three can hold him off long enough I can send one of my nin dogs with a scroll to HQ, Kakashi said. The three ninjas nodded and took up defensive positions in front of Kakashi while facing Yum. Then out of nowhere Yum launched himself at them with blinding speed. He first reached Sakura, who barely had enough time to dodge a swing from one of his gauntlets. But he did manage to connect a kick to chest, sending her back a couple of feet. Allow me to show you what else I can do with this armor, Yum said as he began concentrating what appeared to be chakra in his hand. Soon the chakra was shaped like a ball, and then he threw it at Lee and Guy. The two taijutsu's users managed to dodge the attack, but it was the results that got them. When the ball struck the ground it created a massive explosion that sent the two ninjas flying. Kakashi watched it all and couldn't help but notice how the ball of chakra looked like a raisin. However, he focused back on the scroll in his hand and after finishing this new piece of information summoned Pakken. Yo, Kakashi handed the scroll to the nin dog. I need you to get this to HQ as fast as you can. Got it, the nin dog said as he took the scroll into his mouth and dashed off at unnatural speed. Yum spotted this and began to form another chakra ball, this time from all 10 of his thorns. They fired the chakra balls all at the same time. Kakashi noticed this and acted quickly. Doton, Earth-style wall jutsu. And soon a wall of earth with 4 dogs' faces appeared between Pakken and the chakra balls. When the balls connected with the wall it exploded, causing a huge aftershock to knock some of the people back. But Pakken managed to get away and back to HQ. However, Kakashi, Guy, Lee and Sakura still had to deal with Yum, that is until they heard a noise from behind. A large crater was created from the impact and coming out of it was Hakai Todoroki. Hey Yum! I came here to help ya. Ah shit, was all Kakashi said. A few hours later Shikaku read the scroll from Kakashi to the Reikage, Hokage, and Tsuchikage that Pakken had delivered. Aside from having chakra, the attackers seem to possess different types of abilities. As such we can only determine what they are when we face them in battle. However, it turns out that they all have 5 similar abilities that Kakashi was able to figure out during his fight with this Yum character. They are, Blood Stall, Blood Steal. It is a move that allows them to fuse their chakra into their bloodstream to increase their defenses and offenses as well. But they only use them for one of them, not at the same time. The other is Versteckt, Hidden Sword. This ability allows them to create weapons of their choosing from nature chakra. This would explain why our weapons seem to have little effect on them. The next is Geistschritt, Spirit Walk, which allows them to move fast as light from how Kakashi described it, making it impossible for anyone to detect them. Then there is Offenen Sinin, Open Senses, which is basically like sensory-type ninjas except that it allows them to detect sound of movement to even give them enhanced vision. The last one, and to me the most dangerous, is the Weg Salbais, Path of the Sage. This literally covers them in an armor of nature chakra that changes their forms and gives them more power. Tsunade sighed. Naruto really outdid himself with these guys. She said, now's not the time to be complimenting our enemy's skills, Tsunadeheim. I replied, we need to inform all platoons of this and have the captains regroup their forces as quickly as possible. If not, then we will suffer even more losses. Suddenly Inoichi spoke up. Shikaku, advanced scouts have spotted the main army approaching from the west, heading towards where the 3rd division is. Shikaku made an tisk sound. Damn it, this isn't going well. We'll have to merge some platoons of different divisions together in order to better even the odds against the enemy. If the main army manages to reach even one of our divisions, they'll be wiped out in an instant. I nodded in agreement, and then asked, any word from the sea? And what about the daimyos? No sign of a naval force from the north end of the country. I've received reports that ninjas bearing the whirlpool symbol have been seen in the forest but have made no signs of action against any of the guardhouses that the daimyos are in. Inoichi reported. I let out a breath of relief at the news. As long as they aren't in any current danger, then we can just focus on the battles right now. Then he looked at the other 2 Kages. Knowing what he was thinking of, they both nodded in agreement. I then turned towards Shikaku. Tell B to get ready for battle. Deep within the area known as the Mountain's Graveyard, in which the remains of an unknown creature are, along with dozens of caves, was where the members of Akatsuki had gathered. No one talked to each other, just keeping silent and looking at each other. A few of them, such as Deidara and Haiden, were getting very annoyed at the long wait. Where the hell is this guy? Haiden finally asked. Calm yourself, a voice said. I am here. Everyone looked up and saw Pain and Conan walking towards them. Be pulled by Pain was a pale-skinned man wearing a blue kimono. Strapped to his waist was a bottle filled with what appeared to be bubbles. This was Utakata, container of the 6 tails. What the hell took you so long, damn it? Haiden asked as Pain and Conan passed right by him. I thought I was going to die of boredom, if only we were that lucky. Kakaza mumbled. Haiden glared at his partner as the other Akatsuki members heard a familiar chuckle. Coo. I see that not much has changed since I've been away, a voice said. Everyone looked at the source and saw none other than Orochimaru standing before them, with Kabuto by his side. Both of them had smirks on their faces. Deidara was the first to react, his hands reaching for his explosive clay. Orochimaru, you have some guts coming back here, the blonde said. Leave him, Pain ordered, no emotions at all in his voice. He is necessary for us to win this war. After this you may do what you please with him. Orochimaru chuckled again. Such lack of emotions, Pain-kun. I see that you haven't changed as much. Now allow me to examine this army of yours. And with that the rest of the Akatsuki members entered the cave. What they saw shocked most of them. Facing them was the ghetto statue, the same one used to seal the bijus. It sat on top of a giant flower floating in green water. And inside the water were thousands of white setsus. Holy shit, Haiden murmured. Pain threw his captive down on the ground. Once we've sealed the Six Tails we'll have a total of 70,000 of these clones. And with Orochimaru's help we shall be given even more firepower to our army. You will all be given command of the army and engage both the Whirlpool army and the allied shinobi force. Soon this world will know true pain and peace. When Kiba hit the rock, he hit it hard. Of course, what else do you expect when a man twice your size throws you? The man who threw him was Fusho Adaru, one of the Voriders. He had split up with his platoon from the rest of the division, as ordered, only have Fusho chasing after them. Kiba's cockiness got the best of him, and soon he engaged the man along with his platoon. The result was the complete slaughter of everyone by a laughing Fusho. The odd part was that no matter how much damage they did to him he seemed to be unaffected by it. Right now he was laughing. It's terrible. Terrible, 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 terrible. It's terrible to fight someone so weak in Izuka, Fusho said. With each word he walked closer and closer towards Kiba, with those gauntlets of his covered in blood. As he walked he kicked aside a wounded Akamaru, causing Kiba to let out a weak growl of anger. Fusho laughed again. Is the little pup trying to act like a big bad wolf? He asked mockingly. Well, forget it. Against me my power you are no match, the power of pain. You see, His Majesty bestowed the seal of pain on me, so that whatever damage I take allows me to absorb it, and redirect it as an attack. Fusho had a nasty grin on his face. Your kind is inferior to our might, and His Majesty's dream shall become a reality. Now die. And with that he threw a chakra spear from his gauntlets at Kiba. Kiba could barely move as he watched the spear heading straight towards him. Kaitan, big flame bullet jutsu. And suddenly a giant wave of flame struck the chakra spear, resulting in a massive explosion that nearly blew Kiba away. The end result was a giant crater with smoke still coming out of the ground, and standing between Kiba and Fusho was Jiraiya-sama? Kiba asked in shock as the legendary Sannin stood in front of him. The white-haired man had a determined look on his face as he stared down at Fusho. Fusho, however, wasn't really that intimidated. Instead he was laughing. Oh my! What a treat! Fusho said as he cracked his knuckles. I've been wanting to meet you, Jiraiya the Toad Sage. Now I can have the honor of killing you. Oh, His Majesty will be pleased. The Toad Sage raised an eyebrow. His Majesty? Didn't know Naruto became royalty. Fusho said nothing. Instead he used Gai's Shrit and teleported right in front of Jiraiya. The Sannin barely had enough time to get out of the way when a gauntlet destroyed the area where he was standing moments ago. The result of the impact sent a massive crack in the ground that headed straight towards Kiba. Kiba barely had enough time to get free of the rock and jump out of the way as the crack opened wide enough and consumed the rock. Fusho created several chakra spears from nature chakra and threw them at Jiraiya. The man used every skill he had to dodge since they exploded upon impact. Jiraiya was trying to form a hand seal as he dodged. When he finally got it he yelled, Doton, swamp of the underworld jutsu, and suddenly Fusho's feet began to sink into the ground, which had become like water in a swamp. While his opponent was momentarily stunned and unable to move, Jiraiya formed another set of hand seals. Doton, Earth Flow River Jutsu. Doton, Earth Dragon Bullet Jutsu, and Kaitan, Great Fireball Jutsu. The first jutsu created a path of mud towards Fusho, throwing him even more off balance. The second jutsu formed a dragon's head of earth and fired concentrated mud, which was combined with fire by the third and last jutsu. Fusho watched as the combo attack came flying right at him. Damn, that's more than my ability can handle, he thought to himself as he activated his blood stall in defense mode just as the attack struck him and exploded. Jiraiya sensed the change in chakra in Fusho's body, giving him a realization. Looks like that seal of his can only absorb so much damage. That means I have to keep pressing the attack. With that, Jiraiya charged through the smoke created by the combo attack's explosion. In his right hand the Rasengan began to form as he jumped into the air. When the smoke cleared it revealed Fusho, who had some burnt marks on his clothes but was nevertheless okay. He saw Jiraiya coming at him from the air and automatically prepared to strike him back with his gauntlet. When the gauntlet and the Rasengan connected, it created a small shockwave that sent the Toad Sage flying backwards and causing Fusho's hand to get dozens of scratches with blood flying out. You bastard! Fusho screamed at Jiraiya as he took some of his blood and formed some hand signs. Weg Salbais, Salbei One Seal, Sage of Wounded Soul. Jiraiya's eyes widened as the man's form began to change. Remembering from the information that he got from Inoichi, he knew that might not be able to stand against him. Acting quickly, he formed some hand signs. Summoning, overworked tea house ceiling jutsu, and coming out of the ground was a large tea house that had toad statues on every corner of it. It surrounded Fusho, and when it was finally up, the doors and windows all shut with the kanji of seal on them. Kiba, who had been watching the whole time while helping Akamaru, was amazed at what had just happened. Once he got his partner back to his feet, the two ran over to Jiraiya, who was panting. "Jiraiya-sama, are you okay?" Kiba asked. Jiraiya took in some air before standing up. "Yeah, I'm fine, kid, but that barrier won't hold him for long." And as if to prove his point, there was banging inside and small parts of the barrier began to break. "Kid, you go and join up with another platoon," Jiraiya said. "What about you?" Kiba asked quizzically. Jiraiya began to walk away from Kiba before replying, "I'm going to deal with the source of the problem." And with that took off. Kakashi grunted as another thorn scratched his side. So far he managed to do a good job of fighting against Yum despite his newly acquired powers. Guy, Sakura and Lee were fighting against the other Varitor, whose name apparently was Hawkeye. That one apparently had the seal of anger in him, feeding off the anger of others to increase his own strength. But right now Kakashi had to focus on his own fight. He dodged several more thorns and then made a beeline towards Yum. Yum fired more chakra balls at Kakashi, small ones so he wouldn't use too much of his chakra. This made it easier for the Konoha to dodge them as he prepared his Chidori. When Kakashi was close enough, he lunged the Chidori forward. However, before it struck home, Kakashi had another series of flashes in his mind, the same kind he had when one of Yum's thorns impaled him. He saw Obito and Rin being killed brutally by Yum along with his mother, who was crying out for him, and his father. How? Kakashi thought. None of his thorns touched me? Before he could think of an explanation, Kakashi felt something strike him in the chest. He looked and saw that Yum had impaled him with his own hand. Kakashi gasped as he managed to pull the hand out and backed away a few feet. His vision started to become blurry as he glared at Yum. Yum smirked underneath his mask. "My armor allows me to radiate a small field of fear. That way if an opponent was to get close to me, they would feel a little bit of fear." Then his thorns began to light up as chakra started to form in balls from the thorns' tips. "And now," Yum said, "time for you to die, Kakashi Hatake." "I am not done yet," Kakashi said as he activated his Mangekyo Sharingan, using Kamui on Yum. Yum could feel the technique take effect on his right arm as a dimensional vortex began to form around it. If Yum didn't move quickly, then it would engulf his entire body. Acting quickly, Yum cut off his right arm and once he was at a fair distance fired the chakra balls while his arm disappeared. Kakashi was about to collapse onto the ground when the 10 chakra balls struck his body, creating holes in his chest, his legs and arms. Kakashi spit out blood as his vision finally went dark, his last thoughts on everything in his life that he hadn't finished yet, and on his teammates too, the ones he had failed to protect. "Kakashi-sensei!" Sakura cried as she watched her sensei lie motionless on the ground. Before she could run to him, Hawkeye landed a punch right into her left cheek. The impact was strong enough to send her flying. "Don't get distracted during a fight, bitch. It ain't good for ya." After seeing Sakura being struck like that, Lee became more enraged and charged Hawkeye, only to be stopped by Guy. "Guy-sensei?" Lee asked. Guy had a calm look on his face. "Calm yourself, Lee. Remember, this man feeds off anger. Attacking how you were about to will not end this fight. We must attack calmly and precisely." Lee looked at his sensei before nodding. "Hi!" And then the two charged Hawkeye together with blinding speed. Kazuch felt the chakra disappear from where he was. "It seems that Kakashi Hatake has died," he said to Naruto. Naruto, who was surrounded by the motionless forms of the surprise attack division, merely replied, "I see." Kazuch raised an eyebrow. "You do not seem saddened by his loss. Was he not your sensei?" Naruto looked at Kazuch with emotionless eyes before replying, "We are at war, Kazuch. He was an enemy. We do not mourn the enemy. We kill them on sight in order to ensure that we bring this world closer to peace." Suddenly a ninja, Yuzashio by the looks of it, appeared bowing before Naruto. "Your Majesty, I bring news from the north." Without looking, Naruto said, "Speak then." "Hi. The army moves at a steady rate, and the Alpha Corps has begun seizing the coastline of the Lightning Country. However, a recon unit faced some trouble from the north." When Naruto said anything, the ninja continued, "It was an army of agile white beings being led by a man in robes. We've identified them as Akatsuki." "I see," Naruto said, his face calm and collected. "Kazuch, how many Varitors do we have in reserve?" Kazuch touched his forehead with his pointer finger, and closed his eyes for a few seconds. When he opened them he replied, 7, Your Majesty, including Osiru." Naruto nodded and turned towards the ninja. "Tell all units near where the sighting was to form defensive circles around the main army. Have them protect the army from any surprise attacks. Once the army has reached the Lightning Country and set up a base, we'll then counter the Akatsuki force." The ninja bowed before leaving. Naruto then turned towards Kazuch. "Have our remaining Varitors go and hold out in some of the paths that Akatsuki might use to bypass the allied shinobi forces. Then have some of our other Varitors move to assist them. But I want Osiru to head towards the area where the daimyos are. Tell him to capture them and kill any opposition." Kazuch bowed his head. "Understood, Your Majesty." Elsewhere with the 4th Division, or one of its platoons, a fierce battle was happening between Gaara, his platoon and 5 of the Voriders, Kensho Hanabira, Yaki Yasudo, Karai Sanso, Bijin Debutsu and Sakushi Omotai. The former was personally engaged with Gaara while the other 4 fought the platoon he was with, which consisted of Shikamaru, Choji, Temari and Matsuri. So far Kensho and Gaara were evenly matched, what with the former using flower petals and Gaara naturally using his sand as their weapons. Both proved effective in both the area of offense and defense, and the proof was in their battle. As Kensho dodged another attack of sand he said, "You know it's a shame that you decided to side against us, Gaara-dano. His Majesty had just high hopes in you." Gaara raised a wall of sand to deflect an attack of flowers. The impact almost made the sand break, but it held firm. Such power, Gaara thought. How can these petals have such strength in them? Then he looked at Kensho. "I would rather stick to my beliefs than join you," he said in retaliation. Kensho smirked at the answer before raising his hands. Suddenly the large numbers of flower petals flew in the air above. "Raining blades!" Kensho shouted, and hundreds to thousands of petals ran from the sky and headed straight towards Gaara. Immediately raised the sand to be above him, and used it as a shield against the petals. When the petals struck the sand, they deflected off of the sand or were stuck into it. Either way, the sand wall began to break due to the onslaught. When the petals began to break through, Gaara created a ball of sand around him in order to act as a secondary defense when the petals were about to strike him. However, the petals managed to push the sand ball down, causing it to crash into the ground. Matsuri dodged an attack from Sakushi when she looked to see how Gaara was doing. "Gaara-sama!" she cried as she watched her boyfriend land on the ground. She was so focused on Gaara that she did not see Bijin charging her. "You better worry about yourself than your precious boyfriend, girlie," he yelled, as he was about to rip her to shreds only to be blasted away by a strong gust of wind. Matsuri looked to see Temari running up to her, her fan out and ready for battle. "Don't lose focus, Matsuri," Temari said. "Gaara can take care of himself, just worry about these bastards." Matsuri took in a breath of air before giving Temari a determined nod. Back with Gaara, the young Kazekage had not taken that much damage from the attack but still was a little weary from the impact. Kensho walked up to him casually, a smirk on his face. "I believe that it is time for me to end this," he said as he bit his finger, drawing some blood. Then he began to form some hand signs. "Weeg Salbais, Salbe Barich Klijin, Sage of the Field of Blades." Suddenly the flower petals began to swarm around Kensho, covering his body from anyone else's view. When the petals went down, Kensho's form had changed. He was now floating in mid-air with the help of strong vines that held him up. His armor was green and surrounded with vines and swords. He wore no helm on his head. Kensho smirked at a shocked Gaara before pointing forward. "Go," he said, and suddenly the blades began to disperse into thousands of flow petals, soon joining the ones already out and about and charged at Gaara. The Kazekage just had enough time to raise a wall of sand to protect him from the oncoming attack. But he was not prepared when a few dozen petals came out of the ground and slashed against Gaara's chest, breaking through his sand armor and causing blood to fly into the air. Everyone paused from what they were doing, watching in horror as Gaara's sand wall fell down due to him losing control, allowing Gaara to be struck by the large numbers of petals that soon covered his body. This caused everyone to shout one thing: "Gaara-sama! What if Uzumaki clan lied to about Naruto Naruhina?" And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.